Bro, Naruto as Grimmjow's reincarnation? The ultimate beast who turned the Nine Tails into a side piece, smashing everyone's destiny, dismantling Akatsuki's, and descaroning Madara's Susanoo. Arrogant, unstoppable, pulling Mei while the village cheers their new demon lord. This is peak badass fantasy.
The thing about the night the nine-tailed fox attacked the Hidden Leaf village is that everybody remembers the fox. They remember the tails crashing through buildings. They remember the ground splitting open under paws the size of apartment complexes. They remember the killing intent so heavy it stopped hearts and turned seasoned shinobi into statues. Everybody remembers the fox, and that makes sense, because the Nine Tails was the most terrifying thing any living person in the Land of Fire had ever witnessed. But what nobody talks about, what the Anbu reports classify at the highest level of secrecy, and what the third Hokage locked in a vault beneath his office, is the moment the fox stopped. It did not stop because Minato Namikaze sealed it. The seal came later. The fox stopped because a baby screamed. Minato was on the back of Gamabunta, already dying, already running through the hand seals for the Reaper Death Seal with blood running from his mouth and chakra hemorrhaging from his body like water from a cracked dam. Kushina was on the ground behind him, impaled on the Nine Tails claw, her chains of chakra straining and failing one by one. The newborn had just been delivered into this chaos, born into fire and screaming in death, the way kings are born into war. And when the child opened his mouth, the cry that came out was wrong. Every Anbu within 100 meters dropped to one knee. Their bodies moved before their brains could process why. It was instinct, the kind buried so deep in the spine it predates language. The cry carried pressure, a weight that had nothing to do with chakra, nothing to do with anything the shinobi world had ever categorized. It was heavier than killing intent. It was older. It was the spiritual signature of something that had survived extinction, something that had eaten its way to the top of a food chain in a dimension this world had never heard of. And it was compressed into the lungs of a 7-pound infant with whisker marks on his cheeks that looked less like the soft lines of a fox kit and more like jagged bone fragments of a mask that belonged to something else entirely. The Nine Tails' head swung toward the baby. Its 9 tails went still. For one full second, the most powerful of the tailed beasts looked at the newborn with an expression that, if anyone had been watching closely enough, they would have recognized as recognition. And then, underneath the recognition, something the Nine Tails had never experienced in 1,000 years of unchained existence. Caution. Minato completed the seal. The Reaper appeared. The fox was dragged, screaming and clawing and fighting, into the infant's belly, compressed behind bars of chakra and locked inside a body that was already radiating a pressure the seal could barely contain. The 8 trigram seal burned itself onto the child's stomach in spiraling ink, and directly over the center of the seal, where the fox's chakra pooled thickest, a second mark appeared. A pitch-black circle burned into the skin from the inside out, perfectly round, the size of a coin. It looked like a hole. It looked like something that should go all the way through. Minato stared at it with dying eyes. Kushina reached for her son with fading hands. They both died believing they had saved the village, and they had. They just did not know what they had saved it with. The third Hokage arrived 20 minutes later. He picked up the crying child, and the moment the infant was in his arms, the pressure eased. The baby's spiritual weight settling down to something that merely made the air feel heavy instead of suffocating. Hiruzen looked at the black mark on the child's stomach, at the jagged whisker marks on his cheeks, at the cyan tint bleeding through the baby's irises, and he made a decision that would define the next 13 years of his life. He named the boy Naruto, as Minato had wished. He took him to the orphanage, as protocol demanded, and he tripled the Anbu surveillance detail, because something in the old man's gut told him this child was going to need watching, and the village was going to need protecting. He just was not sure from which. The orphanage lasted 3 years. Naruto Uzumaki was not a problem child in the way the caretakers expected. He did not cry in the middle of the night. He did not throw tantrums over food or attention. He did not scream when the other children avoided him, or when the caretakers handled him with gloves and tight smiles and eyes that slid away from his face like water off glass. He watched. He watched everything with those cyan eyes. Too bright, too focused, too old for the face they sat in. And when he moved with the economy of something that had learned very early that wasted motion was wasted energy, and wasted energy got you killed. The other children at the orphanage refused to play with him by the time he was 2. They could not articulate why. When pressed, the oldest one said things like, "He looks at us weird, and I feel heavy when he's close." And once, from a 5-year-old girl who had better instincts than most chunin, "He's hungry, but he's already eaten." Naruto left the orphanage at 3 because one of the caretakers tried to hit him. The woman, a civilian with a dead husband and a grudge against anything that reminded her of the fox, swung an open hand at the toddler's face after he had knocked over a shelf of dishes. Her palm connected with his cheek. The sound was wrong. It was the sound of skin hitting stone. The woman yanked her hand back with a yelp, her palm red and stinging, and the toddler looked up at her with an expression that a 3-year-old should not have been capable of producing. It was contempt. Pure, concentrated, centuries-old contempt. The kind of look a king gives a peasant who has just made the terminal mistake of raising their hand. The Anbu on the roof reported the incident. The 3rd Hokage moved Naruto into his own apartment the following week. It was a 1-room unit in the bad part of the village, small and damp, and exactly the kind of place the council was comfortable stashing their demon container, where they would not have to think about him. Hiruzen furnished it himself, brought ramen and blankets, and sat with the boy for an hour in silence because the child did not seem to want to talk. When the Hokage stood to leave, Naruto spoke his first full sentence to the old man. "I don't need any of that," the 3-year-old said, his voice flat and certain. "I just need them to stay out of my way." Hiruzen looked at the child for a long time. "Naruto," he said, and his voice carried the weight of a man who had fought 3 wars and buried 2 of his students. "I hope, when you are older, you will find reasons to want more than that." Naruto did not respond. He was already arranging his apartment with the territorial efficiency of an animal marking its den. The village learned to avoid Naruto Uzumaki the way prey animals learn to avoid a particular stretch of forest. Restaurants refused him, and he stopped trying. He found his own food, hunting rabbits and birds in the training grounds with a speed and ferocity that would have earned him a field promotion in some of the smaller villages. He ate alone because he preferred it. The loneliness that crushed most children, the aching need for connection and warmth, seemed to slide off him. It was there somewhere underneath, buried under layers of something harder and older, but he never showed it. He wore his isolation the way he would later wear his armor, as protection, as identity, as a statement. By age 6, he entered the academy. He did not ask to enter. The Hokage enrolled him, and Naruto arrived on the first day with his hands in his pockets and his eyes already scanning the room for threats. Iruka Umino, assigned to teach his class, watched the boy walk to the back row and sit down without greeting anyone. The other children gave him a wide berth, wider than they gave even the clan kids, wider than they gave Sasuke Uchiha, who had arrived that same year with the haunted eyes of a boy who had watched his family die. Iruka made the mistake on the 3rd day of calling on Naruto and receiving silence. "Naruto, please answer the question." Those cyan eyes lifted from the desk. "The answer is the 2nd Hokage created the Shadow Clone Jutsu for intelligence gathering. You already know that. You're testing me because you think I'm stupid. Ask me something worth answering." The class went dead silent. Iruka's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to reprimand the boy, and something, some instinct, some flicker of self-preservation he would later thank, stopped him. He moved on to the next student. After class, he stood at his desk for a long time, staring at the seat where Naruto had been sitting, and wondered what exactly the Hokage had enrolled in his classroom. At age 8, the brawling years began. 3 genin, fresh off their graduation, drunk on the authority of their new headbands, cornered Naruto in an alley behind the weapons shop on a Wednesday evening. They were 15. He was 8. The math to them was simple. Hey, demon brat. The leader of the three was a Hyuga branch member with a chip on his shoulder and a need to punch down. You lost, freak? This part of town isn't for monsters. Naruto stopped walking. His hands stayed in his pockets. He looked at the three genin the way a cat looks at mice that have wandered into the open. You've got 3 seconds to get out of my way, Naruto said. The Hyuga laughed. His two friends laughed. The laughter lasted exactly 1.5 seconds before the Hyuga found himself embedded in the brick wall of the weapons shop with a forearm across his throat and cyan eyes 2 inches from his face. He had not seen the 8-year-old move. None of them had. I said 3 seconds, Naruto told him. You wasted them. The other two genin attacked from behind. One threw a punch, one threw a kunai. Naruto caught the kunai between 2 fingers without turning around, drove his elbow backward into the puncher's solar plexus, and then slammed the Hyuga's head into the wall hard enough to crack the brick. The whole fight took 4 seconds. All 3 genin went to the hospital. The medical report listed concussions, 3 cracked ribs, and a dislocated jaw. The Anbu reported it. The Hokage read the report. The council demanded action. Hiruzen looked at the 3 genin, trained shinobi, graduated, wearing their headbands and their bruises, and then at the 8-year-old who had put them there and told the council he would handle it. His handling consisted of visiting Naruto's apartment with a box of dango and asking him very carefully to try to avoid hospitalizing fellow Leaf Shinobi. Naruto ate a stick of dango and said, "Tell them to avoid my street." Word spread. Within 6 months, every academy student and most of the younger genin knew the name Naruto Uzumaki. And they knew it the way you know the name of a storm. You do not challenge it. You do not insult it. You get out of its way. The older students who had bullied him in previous years stopped. The instructors who had graded him unfairly started finding their grades mysteriously reviewed by the Hokage's office. The vendors who refused to serve him did so from behind locked doors now, because the boy no longer knocked. He simply went elsewhere, and the loss of even one customer's revenue was preferable to the alternative of finding out what would happen if they pushed back. There was one instructor at the academy who treated Naruto like a human being, and that was Iruka Umino. Iruka did not do it because he was brave. He did it because he recognized something in the boy that nobody else seemed willing to see. Not the fox, not the violence, but the loneliness underneath it. Iruka had lost his parents to the Nine Tails. He had every reason to hate the child. Instead, he looked at Naruto and saw a kid eating alone in a room full of people, and he sat down next to him. "You're going to fail the teamwork module if you keep refusing to work with partners," Iruka told him one afternoon. "Then fail me," Naruto said. "I will," Iruka replied. "And then you'll have to repeat the year, and you'll be stuck in my class even longer." Naruto looked at him, really looked, with those burning cyan eyes, and for the first time, something that might have been amusement crossed his face. "You're annoying," he said. "I've been told," Iruka answered. It was the closest thing Naruto had to a friendship, and Iruka guarded it with the desperate ferocity of a man who knew he was holding something fragile wrapped in razor wire. At age 10, the katana appeared. It happened during a thunderstorm. Naruto was sitting cross-legged on the floor of his apartment, doing absolutely nothing. Just sitting, breathing, the way he sometimes did when the pressure inside him built too high and needed somewhere to go. The cyan energy that always hummed beneath his skin flared. It bled through his pores, filled the room with a light that turned the shadows blue, and then it condensed. It condensed into something physical, something real, something that had weight and edge and intention. A katana materialized in his lap, long, elegant, deadly, with an S-shaped tsuba that caught the lightning outside his window and threw it back in splinters. The blade was already hungry. He could feel it. The weapon radiated a wild, bloodthirsty energy that matched his own so perfectly, it felt less like a weapon appearing and more like a missing limb finally growing back. He picked it up. It fit his hand the way his hand had always been waiting for it to. The word rose in his throat, unbidden, from a memory that belonged to a life he had never consciously lived. "Pantera," he whispered. The blade hummed. The storm outside cracked open the sky. Naruto grinned. the real grin, the one that showed too many teeth and made his whisker marks stretch into something savage. And for the first time in this life, he felt complete. The village council petitioned Hiruzen within 48 hours. An armed child walking the streets, a demon container with a sword, the optics, the danger, the liability. Hiruzen had already read the Anbu reports. He had already watched the surveillance footage of the boy holding the katana with the casual familiarity of someone who had held that exact weapon 10,000 times before. He declined the petition. The child was already a weapon, he told them, and confiscating a piece of steel was not going to change that. The council erupted. Hiruzen did not care. He had fought Orochimaru, fought Hanzo the Salamander, fought in every war this village had ever known. And the look in that 10-year-old's eyes when he held that blade was the look of someone who had fought in wars this world had never imagined. The katana stayed. Naruto carried it openly from that day forward, strapped across his back, the S-shaped tsuba visible above his left shoulder. The weight of it changed the way people reacted to him. Before the katana, they avoided him out of prejudice and unease. After the katana, they avoided him out of something cleaner and more honest, fear. The academy graduation exam arrived 2 years later, and Naruto Uzumaki stood at the front of the classroom with his katana on his back and his cyan eyes scanning the panel of instructors with the bored intensity of a lion surveying a fence. The final practical exam required a demonstration of the clone jutsu. Every student before him had produced 2 or 3 passable illusions that flickered at the edges and dissipated on contact. Standard academy fare, Naruto formed the seal. His chakra surged, blue, crackling, visible to the naked eye in a way that chakra should never be at a genin's level. And 3 clones appeared beside him. They were solid. They did not flicker. Their eyes were the same cyan as his, and they radiated the same hungry pressure, and every instructor at the table leaned back in their chairs without realizing they were doing it. Pass or fail? Naruto said. It was not a question. It was a dare. Iruka handed him his headband. Naruto tied it around his left bicep instead of his forehead, because he was not the kind of person who covered his face with anything. He walked out of the classroom and into the sun, and behind him, the other graduates whispered his name the way villagers whisper about earthquakes. Team assignments came a week later, and whoever had designed the team placements had either a sense of humor or a death wish, because Naruto Uzumaki was placed on Team 7 alongside Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno under the leadership of Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja. Sasuke Uchiha sat 3 seats away from Naruto and said nothing. He did not need to. The tension between them was a living thing, thick enough to chew, and everyone in the room could taste it. Sasuke had been the prodigy of the class, the best grades, the best taijutsu scores, the last Uchiha, the boy with the tragic backstory and the burning need to surpass his brother. And then there was Naruto, who had never once competed for a ranking because competing implied the outcome was uncertain. And Sasuke had spent the entire academy watching this feral, terrifying, incomprehensible monster sit in the back of the classroom and make everything he accomplished feel small. Sasuke hated Naruto the way a flame hates the sun. The flame burns hard and bright and real, and then the sun comes up and the flame becomes irrelevant. And the hatred born from that irrelevance has no cure. Sakura Haruno sat between them and looked like someone who had just been told she was going to be roommates with a wolf and a viper. Her crush on Sasuke was still alive at this point, but it was already developing the stress fractures that proximity to Naruto would eventually shatter. Kakashi arrived 3 hours late, leaning against the doorframe with his orange book in one hand and his visible eye half closed. He looked at his 3 students. He looked at the katana on Naruto's back. He looked at the way Naruto was sitting, leaned back, arms crossed, feet on the desk, grinning at him with the energy of something that wanted him to start something. My first impression of you 3, Kakashi said, is that you're going to be interesting. Naruto locked eyes with him. You're late, Cyclops. Sakura choked. Sasuke's eyebrow twitched. Kakashi's visible eye curved into what might have been a smile, or might have been the expression of a man recalculating the threat level of his own student. Meet me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow morning for your survival test, Kakashi said. Don't eat breakfast. Naruto stood, stretched, and walked past him without breaking eye contact. I'll eat whatever I want, he said on the way out. And I'll be there when I feel like it. He was there before dawn. Sasuke arrived next. Sakura arrived last, bleary-eyed and clutching a water bottle. Kakashi arrived 2 hours late, hands in his pockets, radiating the lazy confidence of a man who had survived 1,000 missions and stopped counting. The rules are simple, Kakashi said, holding up 2 bells. Take these from me before noon. If you can't, you go back to the academy. Come at me with everything you have, or you won't even get close. He pocketed the bells. He opened his book. He started reading. Sakura looked at the bells. Sasuke looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at Kakashi, and then the grin came. The real one. The one that split his face wide open and made his whisker marks stretch and his eyes narrow into something predatory and delighted. He reached over his shoulder and drew his katana in a single fluid motion, and the blade caught the morning sun and threw it back in a line of white light. Finally, he said, somebody worth swinging at. Kakashi's eyes shifted from the page. He closed the book. Later in his report, he would note that this was the fastest he had ever stopped reading during a bell test. Later still, in a conversation with Guy over drinks, he would admit that stopping reading was the decision that saved him from a hospital visit. Naruto vanished. The crack of displaced air was the only warning. Sonido, the movement technique that broke the rules of space itself, launched him from standing still to directly behind Kakashi in the time it took Sakura to blink. His roundhouse kick came from the right, aimed at the back of Kakashi's head, and it carried enough force to split the training post behind the Jonin clean in half when Kakashi ducked. The top half of the post spun through the air and embedded itself in the ground 40 feet away. Kakashi's eye went wide. He rolled forward, already pulling up his headband to reveal the Sharingan, and the fact that he was using the Sharingan on a fresh Genin during a bell test was a statement louder than anything either of them could have said. Naruto did not let him breathe. He closed the gap with a second Sonido, another ear-splitting crack, another impossible burst of speed, and brought his katana down in an overhead arc that Kakashi blocked with a kunai. The impact sent a shockwave through the clearing. The grass flattened in a circle around them. Kakashi's sandals dug trenches in the dirt. What the hell? Kakashi breathed. Naruto's grin widened. Don't tell me that's all you've got, he pressed. Every strike was a commitment, a full-bodied swing or thrust that would have killed a normal person 6 times over and forced Kakashi to spend real effort dodging or deflecting. The Sharingan tracked the blade and predicted the trajectory, but the speed was the problem. The boy was faster than a Genin had any right to be, faster than most Chunin, faster than several Jonin Kakashi could name. Each Sonido repositioned Naruto at a different angle, behind, above, to the left, directly in front. And each reappearance came with an attack that carried the weight of a battering ram. Kakashi substituted with a log and gained distance. He landed on a tree branch and formed hand seals. Earth style, headhunter jutsu. The ground beneath Naruto opened to swallow him. Naruto stamped his foot. The ground closed with a crunch, the jutsu collapsing under the spiritual pressure radiating off his body. He looked up at Kakashi, raised one open palm, and a sphere of blue energy condensed in front of his fingers, spinning, compressed, whining with a sound like a generator about to overload. Cero. The beam of blue light that erupted from his palm punched through the tree branch Kakashi was standing on, through the tree behind it, and through the hillside behind that. The blast carved a trench 80 feet long and 6 feet deep, vaporizing everything in its path and leaving the edges of the trench glowing orange with residual heat. Kakashi landed on a different branch, breathing hard. His Sharingan was spinning at full speed. His book was long forgotten. From the tree line, Sakura watched with both hands over her mouth. Her brain had stopped processing 5 seconds ago and was running on pure survival instinct, which was telling her to be somewhere else, anywhere else, preferably a different country. Sasuke watched from behind a boulder, and the expression on his face was one that would define his character for years to come. A mixture of fury and fascination, and the sickening realization that the gap between himself and Naruto Uzumaki was so vast it might require a different unit of measurement. Kakashi dropped to the ground and raised both hands. "All right," he said, and there was a crack in his usual lazy tone that had never been there during a bell test before. "That's enough." Naruto stood there with his katana resting on his shoulder, still grinning, barely winded. "I want those bells." Kakashi looked at him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out both bells. He tossed one to Naruto, who caught it without looking. Then he tossed the other to Sasuke, who caught it with a scowl. "Team 7 passes," Kakashi said. "What about the teamwork lesson?" Sakura asked, her voice about an octave higher than usual. "The lesson," Kakashi said, watching Naruto sheath his katana, "was that sometimes your teammate is the most dangerous thing on the battlefield, and the smartest thing you can do is stay out of his way." That evening, Kakashi sat in the Hokage's office and placed his report on the desk. Hiruzen picked it up, read it, and set it down. "He used something you called a Cero," Hiruzen said. "It vaporized a hillside, Lord Third. And you say his skin, harder than iron. I hit him with a clean right hand during one exchange. My knuckles are still bruised." Kakashi flexed his hand for emphasis. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He looked very old. "Kakashi," he said, "I need you to understand something. That boy is going to be the most powerful shinobi this village has ever produced. My job, and yours, is to make sure he does it as a leaf shinobi and not as a threat to the leaf." Kakashi nodded. He did not mention that for about 3 seconds during the bell test, with that blue beam punching through solid earth and the air around the boy crackling with a pressure that made his Sharingan ache, he had genuinely considered whether that ship had already sailed. Team 7's first few D-rank missions were comedy in its purest form. Catching the Fire Lord's wife's cat, Tora, a mission that had humbled Genin teams for a generation, lasted 4 minutes. Naruto walked into the forest, flared his Reiatsu, and every animal within a half-mile radius froze in primal terror. Tora came to him. The cat walked out of a bush, fur standing on end, and sat at his feet with the resigned obedience of a creature that had just recognized something much higher on the food chain. Sakura stared. Did the cat just surrender? Naruto picked Tora up by the scruff. The cat did not scratch. The cat did not hiss. The cat hung there, limp and cooperative, its eyes the size of dinner plates. "Animals are smarter than people," Naruto said. "They know when to quit." The weeding mission went sideways when Naruto, bored out of his skull after 20 minutes of pulling weeds, discovered that a miniature Cero, a blast the size of a marble, barely more than a flicker, could vaporize weeds from a distance of 6 inches without damaging the soil. He cleared the entire field in 90 seconds. The client stared at the perfectly clean rows of vegetables and the faint smell of ozone in the air and paid them double. Kakashi filed a mission report that read, in its entirety, D-rank completed, no casualties, recommend C-rank assignment before my student gets bored and starts hunting something with a pulse. The C-rank came faster than anyone expected, and it came with the name of a country drowning under the heel of a shipping magnate's greed, the Land of Waves. Team 7 received the escort mission with the standard briefing, protect Tazuna, the bridge builder, from bandits and highwaymen during his journey home. Standard C-rank fare, low danger. Sasuke looked bored, Sakura looked nervous. Naruto had his katana and his grin, and the look in his eyes that said he was hoping the briefing was wrong about the low danger part. It was wrong. The Demon Brothers hit them first, 5 miles outside the village. 2 Chunin-level missing nin from the hidden mist, connected by a chain of razored links, lunging from a puddle on the road with coordinated killing intent. They were fast for Chunin. Their chain whipped toward Kakashi and wrapped around his body, and the 2 brothers yanked in opposite directions, and the chain tore through. A log. Substitution. Kakashi was gone. The brothers pivoted toward Tazuna, and that was when Naruto stepped into their path. The chain swung at his neck. He caught it with one bare hand. The razored links ground against his skin. Hierro, the condensed spiritual pressure that turned his body harder than steel, and produced nothing. A sound of metal scraping against something it could not bite into. Sparks flew. The chain went taut and stopped. Both Demon Brothers stared at their chain, then at the hand holding it, then at the 12-year-old attached to the hand, and found a pair of cyan eyes staring back at them with a predator's amusement. "That's it," Naruto said. He yanked the chain. Both brothers came with it, dragged off their feet, hauled through the air like fish on a line. Naruto's free hand formed a fist. He met the first brother in midair with a punch that caved in the man's chest plate and sent him skipping across the road like a thrown stone, unconscious before he hit the second bounce. The second brother tried to disengage the chain and flee. Naruto closed the distance with Sonido. The crack echoed off the trees and drove a knee into the man's stomach that folded him in half and put him on the ground in a heap of broken armor and regret. 4 seconds. 2 Chunin. Both down. Sakura pressed herself against a tree, her breath coming in short gasps. Sasuke stood with a kunai in his hand, unused, his eyes tracking Naruto with the hunger of someone taking notes. Kakashi dropped from the trees, his Sharingan already covered. He looked at the 2 unconscious missing nin. He looked at Naruto, who was wiping his hands on his pants like he had just finished a chore. "You're 12, Kakashi said. It was not an accusation. It was a man trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what he knew should be possible. "And they were trash," Naruto answered. "Can we go now? This road is boring." The mission was upgraded to A rank. The team pushed forward because Naruto did not wait for the discussion about turning back. He started walking, and Tazuna scrambled to follow him, and Kakashi sighed and followed too, because the alternative was letting a 12-year-old wander into enemy territory alone. And honestly, the enemies were the ones he was worried about. The bridge was half finished when they arrived. The land of waves was dying. Gado's stranglehold on the economy had turned a prosperous island into a graveyard of closed shops and hollow-eyed citizens. Naruto saw the poverty and the fear and the way people flinched at sudden sounds, and something shifted in his expression. It was subtle, a tightening of his jaw, a narrowing of his eyes, and it was gone in a moment, replaced by his usual aggressive composure. But it was there. Tazuna's house was in his territory now. These people were in his territory, and Naruto Uzumaki did not tolerate anything in his territory being damaged by an outside threat. Zabuza Momochi came for them on the bridge. The mist rolled in first, thick, heavy, visibility dropping to arm's length. Killing intent saturated the air like a gas leak, and Sakura dropped to her knees, and Sasuke's hand shook on his kunai, and even Tazuna went pale. Naruto stood on the unfinished bridge and breathed the mist in, and his lips curled upward. "Something with teeth," he said. "About time." Zabuza appeared out of the mist like a ghost in bandages, Kubikirabocho on his shoulder, the massive executioner's blade, as tall as a man, heavy enough to cleave through armor and bone. His voice came from everywhere. "Kakashi of the Sharingan, I've been looking forward to this." "Zabuza Momochi, demon of the hidden mist," Kakashi replied, pulling up his headband. "Kids, stay back and protect Tazuna. I'll handle this." Water clones erupted from the mist, 3, 5, 8 of them pouring from the surface of the bridge's water supply. Kakashi engaged the real Zabuza. Steel met steel, and the impact threw water in spiraling arcs, and the 2 Jonin traded blows at speeds that Sakura could barely follow. And then Zabuza's water prison jutsu caught Kakashi, a sphere of water locking the copy ninja in a cage that required physical contact to maintain. Zabuza's arm was buried in the sphere up to his elbow, his scarred face grinning behind his bandages. "Your Sharingan is useless in there," Zabuza said, "and your Genin are about to die." The remaining water clones advanced on Sasuke, Sakura, and Tazuna. Sasuke stepped forward, Sharingan active, the 2 Tomoe patterns spinning, his face set in concentration. 2 clones came at him, and he dismantled them with clean, efficient strikes that showed exactly how good the last Uchiha really was. But there were more clones. And behind the clones, the real Zabuza held Kakashi captive, and the mist was thickening. Naruto had been standing on the bridge railing, arms crossed, watching the fight unfold with the expression of someone watching a play he had already figured out the ending to. His katana was still sheathed. He had been giving Kakashi the opportunity to handle it, because Kakashi was his team leader, and even predators understood hierarchy. Kakashi's imprisonment changed the math. Naruto dropped from the railing and landed on the bridge with a sound that should have been light and was instead heavy, the impact radiating outward in a circle of cracked concrete. His Reiatsu unfurled, and the mist itself recoiled from him. thinning in a 10-foot radius around his body because the spiritual pressure he emitted was burning it away. Zabuza's eyes shifted to the boy. "Oh, the little one wants to play?" Naruto walked toward him. The water clones in his path moved to intercept, and he walked through them, his Reiatsu ripping them apart on contact, the water splashing to the ground in puddles that steamed and evaporated. "Draw your sword, brat," Zabuza growled, raising Kubikirabocho with his free arm. The massive blade came down in a diagonal slash meant to split Naruto from shoulder to hip. Naruto raised one hand and caught the blade on his open palm. The sound, metal against something immovable, the grinding screech of an edge meeting a surface it cannot cut, filled the bridge. Sparks sprayed in both directions. Kubikirabocho, the executioner's blade, the weapon that had carved through the bones of 1,000 shinobi, sat in the palm of a 12-year-old boy and could do nothing. Hierro. The word did not need to be spoken aloud. The technique spoke for itself. Zabuza's eyes went wide above his bandages. His hands tightened on the hilt. He pressed down, pushed, threw his weight into the blade. Naruto's palm did not move. The blade did not sink. The boy's skin did not break. "You call yourself a demon?" Naruto said, and his voice was low and terrible and carried a grin in every syllable. "Let me show you what that word actually means." He shoved Kubikirabocho aside with his palm, stepped inside Zabuza's guard, and raised one finger, his index finger, aimed at the center of Zabuza's chest. The sphere of blue energy compressed into existence at the tip of his finger. It whined. It spun. The air around it distorted. Cero. The blast hit Zabuza at point-blank range and sent the demon of the hidden mist backward off the bridge, through the railing, through the mist, through 50 feet of open air, and into the tree line on the far shore. The impact carved a path through the forest, trees snapping like matchsticks, earth erupting, a plume of dust and debris rising above the canopy like a signal flare. The water prison burst. Kakashi dropped to the bridge, coughing, staring at the path of destruction with his Sharingan spinning so fast it looked like it might fly out of his skull. On the bridge, Sakura stood with her hands over her ears. Sasuke stood with his fists clenched and his jaw tight and his eyes locked on Naruto's back. Tazuna sat down, very hard on the ground, and said something that was either a prayer or a profanity. The mist cleared. Zabuza was gone, retreated into the trees, carried away by his apprentice, the masked hunter Nin who had been watching from the tree line. Survival instinct. Zabuza Momochi, the man who had attempted a coup against the fourth Mizukage, the man who had earned the title of demon through a career of slaughter and chaos, had taken one hit from a 12-year-old and decided that the smartest possible strategy was to be somewhere else. Naruto stood at the edge of the bridge, his raised finger still smoking, and looked into the trees where Zabuza had disappeared. "Don't run," he said, and his tone carried genuine disappointment. "We just started." Kakashi put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "He'll be back," the Jonin said. "They always come back." Naruto's grin returned. "Good." The week that followed was preparation. Kakashi trained Team 7 on the bridge builder's lawn, tree climbing for Sasuke and Sakura, which Naruto completed on the first attempt, and then sat in the highest branch to watch the other two struggle. He did not mock them. He did not help them either. He sat with his katana across his knees and his eyes on the tree line, waiting, hunting for the spiritual pressure he had felt in the mist. Sasuke climbed. Sasuke fell. Sasuke climbed again. Sasuke looked up at Naruto sitting in the tree, effortless, bored, impossibly beyond him, and climbed harder. By the end of the week, Sasuke had mastered tree climbing, water walking, and the beginnings of a fire jutsu variation that Kakashi had shown him. He had also bitten through 2 wooden training posts in frustration, but nobody mentioned that. Sakura mastered chakra control faster than either boy, which Naruto noted without comment, and Kakashi noted with genuine pride. She was intelligent and precise and lacked only the combat instinct that came with being a predator or a prodigy. That would come with time, or with enough exposure to whatever Naruto was doing, which seemed to be its own kind of training program, one based entirely on terror and adaptation. The rematch came on the bridge. In the morning, when the mist rolled back in, and Zabuza and his apprentice materialized from the white like ghosts. Zabuza had bandages around his torso, covering the burns. He held Kubikirabocho in one hand. His killing intent was sharper than before, refined, concentrated, personal. He had spent the week recovering and planning and seething over the fact that a child had driven him out of a fight with a single attack. His apprentice, Haku, the ice-wielding prodigy in the porcelain mask, stood beside him with the serene patience of a weapon waiting to be aimed. "Kakashi," Zabuza said, "this time I'm ready." Kakashi pulled up his headband. "Sasuke, Sakura, handle the apprentice. Naruto." "Already on it," Naruto said, and he was already walking towards Zabuza, his katana drawn, his grin a crescent of white teeth in the mist. The fight between Sasuke and Haku was real and earned. Haku's demonic mirroring ice crystals surrounded Sasuke, a dome of ice mirrors, each one reflecting the masked boy's image. Senbon needles flying from every angle with the precision of a rainstorm made of steel. Sasuke activated his Sharingan fully, two Tomoe in each eye, and began to read the patterns. He dodged, deflected, countered. He was fast. He was skilled. He was at 12, already a prodigy worthy of his family name. Haku pushed him harder. Sasuke pushed back. The ice cracked. Sasuke's fireball jutsu melted two of the mirrors. Haku reformed them. Sasuke read the reformation pattern and threw Senbon of his own through the gaps. One caught Haku's shoulder. Blood hit the ice. It was a real fight between two gifted children, and it was beautiful in the way that fights between equals always are. Desperate, evolving, each combatant reaching for something they had never needed before. Behind them, on the other end of the bridge, Naruto and Zabuza were having a different kind of fight. Zabuza opened with everything he had. Water Dragon Jutsu, the massive serpent of compressed water that erupted from the sea below the bridge and lunged for Naruto's body with jaws the size of a man. Naruto punched through it. His fist drove through the dragon's skull and out the back of its neck, the water exploding outward in a shower that drenched the bridge. The jutsu fell apart around his arm. Water Style, Great Waterfall. Zabuza's hands blurred through seals, and the ocean itself seemed to rise. A wall of water the height of a building, crashing toward Naruto with the weight of a collapsing mountain. Naruto raised his blade. He dragged his thumb along the edge, drawing a line of blood, and swept the blood down the flat of the blade with his palm. Grand Ray Cero. The arc of blue energy that exploded from the katana hit the waterfall head-on and split it in half. The blast continued through the water, through the mist, through the air, and cratered the ocean's surface behind Zabuza in a detonation that sent a geyser of salt water 200 feet into the sky. The shockwave blew the mist off the bridge entirely, and for the first time in the fight, there was clear air and clear sunlight, and Zabuza could see exactly what he was dealing with. A 12-year-old boy standing in the middle of his own destruction, his blade trailing smoke, his eyes glowing cyan, grinning at him with the satisfaction of something that was enjoying this way too much. Zabuza lowered Kubikirabocho. His arms were trembling. Every instinct he had was firing, and every single one was saying the same thing: run. He did not run. He was the demon of the mist, and he had his pride, and pride is the last thing a warrior abandons. He charged. Kubikirabocho came down in a vertical cleave that would have split a boulder. Naruto sidestepped with Sonido, appeared at Zabuza's left, and drove an elbow into the side of his head that sent the swordsman skidding across the bridge. Zabuza caught himself, spun, swung horizontal. Naruto leaned backward under the blade. It passed an inch above his nose, and fired a bala from his fist. The rapid-fire energy round hit Zabuza's sword arm and numbed it from elbow to fingertip. Kubikirabocho clattered to the bridge. Zabuza reached for it with his other hand, and Naruto's foot came down on the blade, pinning it to the concrete. "You're done," Naruto told him. "That was fun, though. You've got more fight in you than most." Zabuza looked up at him. Behind the bandages, his expression was unreadable, but his eyes, the eyes of a man who had killed his entire graduating class at the age of 9, held something that might have been respect, or might have been the kind of exhausted recognition that comes when a predator meets something higher on the chain. The fight on the other end of the bridge ended differently than canon, and it ended because Haku chose it. Sasuke's final fireball jutsu, amplified, intense, poured with everything the Uchiha had, melted through Haku's strongest mirror and caught the ice user in the shoulder. Haku stumbled. The mask cracked, and behind the mask was the face of a boy, barely older than them, with gentle eyes and a sad mouth and the resigned expression of someone who had already decided how this story ended. "Please," Haku said, "kill me. I have failed Zabuza-sama. I have no further purpose." Sasuke hesitated. His kunai was raised, his Sharingan spinning, but the killing blow did not come. Sasuke was a lot of things: ambitious, angry, obsessive, but he was not at 12, a murderer of surrendering opponents. Haku smiled. He turned away from Sasuke and threw himself between Zabuza and Naruto's next strike, taking the blow that would have ended the fight. Naruto's fist connected with Haku's chest. Hierro hardened, driven by the force of someone who had been enjoying the fight too much to hold back, and Haku flew backward into Zabuza's arms, his ribs broken, his eyes going dim. The bridge went silent. Zabuza caught Haku. He looked down at the dying boy in his arms, and the bandages hid his face, but they could not hide the tremor in his hands, and they could not hide the way his grip tightened on the body, and they could not hide the fact that the demon of the hidden mist was, in that moment, nothing more than a man holding the only person who had ever mattered to him. Naruto stood 5 feet away. His fist was still raised. His grin was gone. He watched Zabuza hold Haku with an expression that was complicated and unreadable and entirely human. He lowered his fist. "This wasn't your fight to die in, kid," Naruto said. It was the only eulogy he offered, and it was enough. The sound of slow clapping broke the moment. Gato, the shipping magnate, the tyrant, the man who had been pulling strings from behind his wall of mercenaries, walked onto the bridge from the opposite end, flanked by 200 hired thugs carrying swords and clubs in the smug certainty that numbers meant safety. "Well, well," Gato said, adjusting his sunglasses. "The demon of the mist can't even handle a group of children. How disappointing. I was never planning to pay you anyway, Zabuza. Your services are..." Naruto pointed one finger at Gato. The Cero formed, blue, spinning. The size of a fist. Gato had time to register the light. He did not have time for anything else. The blast punched through his chest and continued through 8 of the mercenaries standing behind him and cratered the end of the bridge in a detonation that sent the remaining mercenaries diving for cover. Gato's body hit the ground with a smoking hole where his torso had been. The speech was unfinished. The threat was over. 200 mercenaries looked at the crater, looked at the boy who had made it, and ran. They tripped over each other in their haste to get off the bridge and away from whatever was standing on it. The Land of Waves civilians, who had been gathering at the edge of the bridge with makeshift weapons and the last dregs of their courage, watched the mercenaries flee and the tyrant fall, and the 12-year-old lower his hand and stand there in the clearing smoke with the wind pulling at his hair, and they erupted. They cheered. They screamed. They wept. Old men who had forgotten how to stand up straight stood up straight. Children who had been born into Gato's shadow saw sunlight for the first time. Zabuza laid Haku on the bridge, crossed the boy's arms over his chest, and stood. He pulled the bandages down from his face. He looked at Naruto. "You fight like something that doesn't belong in this world," Zabuza said. "Maybe I don't," Naruto replied, "but I'm here anyway." Zabuza picked up Kubikira Bocho. He walked to the edge of the bridge. He stood there for a long time, looking at the water, and then he drove the blade into the railing as a grave marker for the boy who had lived and died for him, and he walked into the mist and disappeared. The bridge was completed a week later. They named it the Great Naruto Bridge. When Sakura told Naruto, he looked at the sign, looked at the bridge, and said, "Good. They better remember." Kakashi's mission report for the Land of Waves ran 14 pages. The Hokage read it twice. The Chunin exams announcement came 6 weeks after the wave mission, and it hit the village like an electric current. Teams from every nation would converge on Konoha for the biannual selection, a tournament of the best young shinobi in the world, fighting for the rank of Chunin and the glory of their villages. Kakashi delivered the application forms with his typical energy. "This is optional," he told them. "If you don't feel ready, there's no shame in." "I'm in," Naruto said, already filling out the form. Sasuke took the form without speaking. He had been training harder since Wave, training with a ferocity that worried even Kakashi, spending his evenings throwing kunai until his fingers bled, and his mornings running the village perimeter until his legs gave out. The image of Naruto catching Zabuza's blade on bare skin was burned into his brain like a brand, and every hour of training was an attempt to make that brand hurt less. Sakura hesitated. She looked at Naruto. She looked at Sasuke. She signed the form. Team 7 walked into the Chunin exam registration building, and the first thing that happened was a hallway full of genin from 5 different nations turning to look at them. The second thing that happened was every single one of those genin feeling the Reiatsu rolling off Naruto in low, constant waves, and the hallway got very still. A boy with face paint and a puppet on his back, Conqueror of the Sand, stepped forward with a smirk. "Hey, Leaf Runts, this isn't a daycare. The exams are for real." Naruto walked past him. He did not look at him. He did not acknowledge him. He walked past Kankuro the way a hurricane passes a street sign, with complete indifference to its existence. Kankuro's smirk died. His hand twitched toward his puppet's controls, and then a wave of pressure hit him. Spiritual weight that pressed down on his shoulders and made his knees buckle, and the hand went still. He looked at his teammate Tamari. Tamari was already pale. Behind them, standing against the wall with his arms crossed and his gourd on his back, Gaara of the Sand watched Naruto walk through the hall. His sea-green eyes tracked the Leaf Genin with an intensity that made his siblings uncomfortable for different reasons than usual. "Mother wants his blood," Gaara whispered. Inside Gaara's seal, the one-tailed Shukaku thrashed and screamed. Inside Naruto's seal, the Nine-Tails opened one eye and looked at the sand container across the hallway and rumbled something that sounded like amusement. The first phase of the Chunin exams was the written test, administered by Biki Morino, the head of Konoha's Torture and Interrogation Division, a man whose face was a roadmap of scars and whose presence was enough to make experienced jonin sweat. The test was designed to be impossible. The questions were beyond genin level, pulled from advanced tactical theory and code-breaking manuals. The real test was cheating, gathering information without being caught, demonstrating the intelligence-gathering skills expected of a Chunin. Naruto sat in his assigned seat. He picked up his pencil. He did not cheat. He did not need to. His pesquisa, the spiritual radar that let him feel the spiritual signature and emotional state of every living being within a massive radius, told him everything he needed to know. He felt the planted Chunin ringers sitting among the genin, their signatures steady and confident, while everyone else's fluctuated with panic. He felt the examiners watching from the edges of the room, their attention spiking whenever a genin moved their hands. He felt the rhythm of the test, the real pattern behind it, the way it was designed to break down the weak and identify the resourceful. He answered 4 questions based on things he had read in the Hokage's library, left the rest blank, and waited. The 10th question came. Ibiki stood at the front of the room and delivered his ultimatum. Take the question and risk failure forever, or quit now and try again next year. Teams started dropping out. 1, 3, 5, 10. Chairs scraping, heads bowing, the room thinning. Naruto did not move. He did not even consider moving. The idea of quitting, of backing down, of surrendering a chance at the fight he knew was coming was so foreign to his being that it did not register as an option. Ibiki's gaze landed on him. The scarred interrogator stared at the 12-year-old who was sitting with his arms crossed and his feet on the desk and his expression somewhere between bored and hungry, and Ibiki felt something he rarely felt, interest. "All right," Ibiki said. "Everyone remaining, you pass." The room erupted. Naruto stood, cracked his neck, and walked toward the window. "What are you doing?" Sakura asked. "The next exam isn't going to come to me," Naruto said, and jumped. 3 seconds later, a woman crashed through the window behind him. Anko Mitarashi, the proctor for the second exam, arriving in a banner of proclamation and wild energy that perfectly matched the chaos she was about to introduce. "Welcome to the Forest of Death," she announced, grinning with a feral delight that Naruto recognized because it looked exactly like his own. The Forest of Death was exactly what Naruto had been waiting for. 44 training grounds of dense forest, dangerous wildlife, and enemy teams, all packed into a 5-day survival exercise where the goal was to collect a pair of matching scrolls and reach the central tower alive. Team 7 entered through Gate 12. Naruto had their Earth Scroll. He tossed it in the air, caught it, pocketed it. "How do you want to do this?" Sasuke asked. His Sharingan was already active, scanning the tree line. "We walk," Naruto said. "And when something attacks us, we take their scroll." "That's your plan?" Sakura said. "Plans are for people who aren't sure they're going to win." They walked. The forest hummed around them. Animals scattering from Naruto's Reiatsu, insects going silent, the entire ecosystem recognizing the apex predator moving through it and responding accordingly. Team 7 cut through the forest like a blade through silk, and within 2 hours, they had encountered and dismantled a team from the Rain Village. Naruto did not even draw his katana. He walked up to the Rain team's ambush, let them spring it, watched 3 water-based jutsu splash against his Hierro like garden hoses on a granite wall, and then fired 3 consecutive bala blasts that knocked each Rain Genin unconscious before they could process what had happened. Sakura collected the Heaven Scroll from the groaning pile of bodies. "We could go to the tower now," she said, holding up both scrolls. "We could," Naruto agreed, "but we won't." He was hunting. He could feel the spiritual signatures scattered through the forest. Dozens of teams, hundreds of genin, all of them radiating different levels of power and intent. Most of them were insignificant, but 3 signatures stood out. Gaara's, heavy, sandy, barely contained, like a dam about to break. Sasuke's, burning and complex, fear and ambition twisted into a single flame. And one more. One that he did not recognize, but that made his spine tighten and his teeth bare. Something that smelled like a snake. Orochimaru found them first. The killing intent came before the man. It rolled through the forest like a wave of poison, and Sakura dropped to her knees, and Sasuke's breath stopped, and even the trees seemed to flinch. It was killing intent on a scale that made Zabuza's feel like a candle next to a bonfire. The condensed murderous focus of one of the 3 legendary Sannin, compressed into a single beam and aimed at Team 7 with the precision of a scalpel. Naruto cracked his neck. The killing intent hit him and slid off him the way water slides off stone. He had been born from a soul that had lived in Hueco Mundo, a dimension where killing intent was the atmosphere, where the air itself wanted to eat you, where every grain of sand was the remnant of a devoured soul. Orochimaru's killing intent was impressive. By human standards, it was overwhelming. By Grimmjow standards, it was Tuesday. Naruto's hand went to his katana. He stepped forward, placing himself between his team and the killing intent, and he grinned. Orochimaru emerged from the trunk of a tree like a snake shedding old skin, his body bending in ways that human bodies should not bend, his tongue extending, his golden eyes catching the filtered forest light and reflecting it back with an alien gleam. He was beautiful in the way that poisonous things are beautiful, alluring and lethal, and absolutely certain of his dominance. My, Orochimaru said, his voice sliding through the air like oil on silk. The Nine Tails container. I've heard such interesting things about you, Naruto-kun. You smell like a rotting corpse, Naruto said. Orochimaru's eyes narrowed with amusement. How delightful. You must be the reason Kakashi has been filing such unusual reports. Tell me, child, what exactly are you? Your problem. Orochimaru moved. He was fast, Sannin level fast, the kind of speed that most shinobi could only dream of. He closed the distance in a flicker of motion, his neck extending, fangs bared, targeting the junction of Naruto's neck and shoulder. The curse mark technique, the parasitic seal that would have bound a lesser target to Orochimaru's will. His fangs hit Naruto's neck. They broke. Both fangs, long, curved, designed to punch through bone and inject corrupted chakra into the victim's tenketsu, struck the surface of Naruto's skin and broke like glass hitting a brick wall. Hierro, the condensed spiritual pressure that made his body harder than anything in this world. Orochimaru recoiled, his mouth filling with blood, his own blood, from the shattered remnants of his fangs cutting up his gums, and for the first time in the encounter, his expression changed. Surprise. Genuine surprise. The kind that even Orochimaru, who had experimented on thousands, who had discovered forbidden techniques that rivaled the Sage of Six Paths, who had stared into the abyss of immortality and negotiated terms, could not fully mask. Impossible, Orochimaru whispered, and blood dripped from his lips. Naruto's Reiatsu exploded. The ground around him cracked. a spiderweb of fissures radiating outward from his feet, the forest floor splitting and sinking under the weight of spiritual pressure that had nothing to do with chakra and everything to do with the soul of a being that had once commanded an army of hollows. The trees within 20 feet leaned away from him, their trunks bowing under the pressure. The air itself thickened, turned heavy, turned predatory. Naruto drew his katana. He dragged his bleeding thumb down the flat of the blade, the blood hissing and glowing blue on contact, and held the weapon horizontal. Grand Ray Cero. The arc of spiked blue energy that erupted from the blade was colossal. It was catastrophic. It was an attack that, in another world, had been banned inside a fortress because it could collapse the building, and here, in the Forest of Death, it carved. A mile-long trench ripped through the forest floor. Trees disintegrated. Earth vaporized. The trench was 20 feet wide and 50 feet deep, and the edges of it glowed with residual energy that hissed and popped in the sudden silence. Every team in the Forest of Death felt the shockwave. Teams on the far side of the training ground stumbled and looked toward the blast. Anko Mitarashi, monitoring the exam from the perimeter, grabbed a tree branch to keep from falling and stared at the column of blue light rising above the canopy. "What the hell is that?" she breathed. In the central tower, the third Hokage stood at the window, his pipe forgotten in his hand, watching the blue light cut across the sky. Orochimaru took the Grand Ray Cero head on. He survived. Because he was Orochimaru, because he had a dozen contingencies and body replacement techniques layered into his very biology, but survival was all he managed. His body was wrecked. He shed his skin and emerged from his own mouth, a new body pulling free of the destroyed one like a snake shedding a ruined shell, and the new body was unmarked, but his expression was marked deeply. He was reassessing. He looked at Naruto, at the boy standing in the smoking aftermath of an attack that had rewritten the geography of the forest, and the curse mark plan died in his mind. This container was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too powerful to risk binding, because the thing inside him might reject the mark, and the resulting backlash might be lethal even to a Sannin. "You are full of surprises, Naruto-kun," Orochimaru said, and his voice was steady, but his body language was already oriented toward escape. "We will meet again." He melted into the ground. His spiritual signature vanished, suppressed to nothing, hidden, gone. Naruto stood in the trench and breathed and let his Reiatsu settle, and behind him Sakura was on the ground and Sasuke was standing, barely, his Sharingan tracking the space where Orochimaru had been, his face a mask of something that was equal parts terror and awakening. Because Sasuke had just watched Naruto drive off one of the three legendary Sannin with a single attack, and the part of Sasuke that hungered for power, the part that Itachi's massacre had created, the part that whispered, more, always more, was salivating, and the part of Sasuke that was still a 12-year-old boy was terrified of what that hunger was becoming. "You okay back there?" Naruto asked, not turning around. Sasuke's fist clenched. "I'm fine." "Good. We're going to the tower." They went to the tower. They arrived 17 hours into a 5-day exam. The only other team there was Gaara's sand team, who had arrived in 90 minutes and were already sitting in the building with blood-stained clothes and hollow expressions. Gaara looked at Naruto when Team 7 walked in. Their eyes met, cyan and sea green, predator and predator, container and container, and the air between them hummed with competing pressures. "You're the one Mother screams about," Gaara said. "Tell your mother to be afraid," Naruto replied. He walked past Gaara and into the tower. Behind him, Temari and Kankuro exhaled like they had been holding their breath for the entire exchange. The preliminary rounds took place in the tower's arena, a simple combat floor surrounded by viewing balconies where the remaining teams watched and waited and wondered who was going to die. The matches were assigned by random lottery, names appearing on a screen, and the atmosphere was thick with tension and ambition and the smell of bandage adhesive. Naruto's first match was against a sound genin named Zaku Abumi, a loud, overconfident teenager with air pressure tubes implanted in his palms and a chip on his shoulder the size of a small country. "You're the one who messed up Lord Orochimaru's plans," Zaku said, stepping onto the arena floor with both hands raised, the tubes in his palms humming with compressed air. "He might not care about you anymore, but I'm going to enjoy breaking you. Naruto descended from the balcony railing. He did not take the stairs. He stepped off the railing and dropped 30 feet to the arena floor and landed without bending his knees, the impact cracking the stone beneath his feet. Hayate Gecko, the sickly proctor, looked between them and coughed. Begin. Zaku thrust both palms forward, decapitating airwaves. The twin blasts of compressed air, powerful enough to shred rock, to strip flesh from bone, to level a small building, roared across the arena in a howling wall of pressure. The air hit Naruto. It parted around him. His Reiatsu deflected the technique the way a mountain deflects the wind, the compressed air screaming past him on both sides, tearing up the arena floor to his left and right, while he stood untouched in the center. That tickles, Naruto said. Zaku's face lost its color. He fired again. Both palms, maximum output, the tubes whining with the strain. The air cannons hit Naruto's chest and produced nothing. He walked forward. Each step crunched the broken stone underfoot. Zaku's blasts were hitting him at full power, and he was walking through them. No. Zaku thrust his palms out for a third volley, and Naruto was already there. Sonido, the crack of displaced air swallowing the sound of Zaku's attack, standing inside the boy's guard with one hand around Zaku's face. I'll give you credit for guts, Naruto said, and slammed him into the floor. The arena floor cratered. Zaku's body bounced once, went limp, and did not move. The tubes in his palms cracked and hissed out their remaining pressure in a sad little wheeze. Hayate coughed. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. The balcony was silent. Then the whispers started. He didn't even draw his sword, Sakura said, her voice small. He didn't need to, Kakashi replied, and his tone was the tone of a man who had stopped being surprised and started being concerned. Rock Lee, standing at the railing with his fists clenched and his eyes blazing, turned to his sensei. Guy sensei, that boy, his speed, it's beyond what I've seen from any genin, Guy said, and for once his voice lacked its usual bombastic energy. He was studying Naruto with the focus of a man who understood physical combat better than anyone alive. Lee, be careful if you face him. I would welcome the challenge, Lee declared, his voice ringing with sincerity. Guy put a hand on his student's shoulder and said nothing else. Sasuke's match came 2 fights later, against a sound kunoichi with melody-based genjutsu, and Sasuke won it clean and fast. His Sharingan saw through the genjutsu, and his taijutsu, honed by months of desperate training, dismantled the kunoichi's defenses in under a minute. He was good. He was genuinely, impressively, undeniably good. When he returned to the balcony, he looked at Naruto, and the expression on his face was the expression of someone running a race against a bullet train and knowing it. The tournament bracket was set. The final round, the public tournament, held in the arena with the Hokage and visiting dignitaries and the entire village watching, would feature the remaining competitors in one-on-one bouts. Naruto Uzumaki versus Neji Hyuga, Sasuke Uchiha versus Gaara of the Sand, and several other matches that no one cared about nearly as much. The month-long training break between the preliminaries and the finals was a period of escalation. Sasuke trained with Kakashi, learning the Chidori, the lightning blade, the technique that screamed on impact and could punch through anything. Sakura studied with renewed determination. The village prepared for the festival atmosphere of the tournament. Naruto trained alone. He went to the deepest part of Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death, his favorite playground, and he trained by fighting. He fought the tigers. He fought the bears. He fought the giant centipedes and the mutant leeches and the territorial snake summons that Orochimaru had left behind. He fought them all, and he destroyed them all, and the forest grew emptier and tamer in his wake. At night, he sat on the highest tree in the forest, his katana across his knees, and he talked to it. He talked to Pantera. He did not understand why the blade had a name, or why it felt alive, or why holding it made him feel like he was remembering a home he had never been to, but he talked to it anyway, because it was the only thing in this world that understood what he was. We're going to fight a Hyuga in front of the whole village, he told the blade. He talks a lot about destiny. The blade hummed in his palm. It sounded like a growl. It sounded hungry. Yeah, Naruto agreed. Me too. The Chunin exam finals arrived, and the arena was packed. Every seat filled. The Hokage sat in his box with the visiting Kazekage, who was, though no one knew it yet, Orochimaru wearing another man's face. Jonin from every village lined the walls. Civilians crammed the upper tiers. Street vendors sold yakitori and dango outside the gates, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The first match was called Naruto Uzumaki versus Neji Hyuga. Please come to the arena floor. Naruto vaulted the railing and dropped to the arena floor. No stairs. His sandals hit the packed earth and the ground trembled. A vibration that ran through the stone and up through the seats and made several spectators grip their armrests. Neji walked down the stairs with the composure of a person who had already decided the outcome. His Byakugan was active, the veins around his pale eyes bulging, his lavender irises focused on Naruto with the detached intensity of someone reading a medical chart. "You are fated to lose here," Neji said, settling into the gentle fist stance. His palms were open, his fingers extended, each one aimed at a tenketsu point on Naruto's body. "Your chakra network is unusual, but fate does not bend for the unusual. It breaks it." Naruto did not take a stance. He stood with his hands at his sides. His katana stayed on his back. His eyes were on Neji, and the boredom in them was starting to shift towards something else. "Destiny," Naruto repeated. The word sat in his mouth, and he turned it over, and he found it wanting. "You're just a coward making excuses for being weak." The arena went cold. Neji's composure cracked, a hairline fracture running through his expression, his jaw tightening, his Byakugan widening. "Begin!" Genma, the proctor, announced. Neji moved first. He was fast, Hyuga fast, years of gentle fish training propelling him forward in a blur of white robes and open palms. 8 trigrams, 32 palms. His hands flew, strike after strike, each one targeting a tenketsu point, each one aimed with the precision that made the Hyuga style one of the most lethal in the world. Every palm strike hit Naruto, and every palm strike bounced. The sound of it, palms hitting something unyielding, the smack of flesh on surface that refused to give, filled the arena. Neji's hands worked in perfect form, hitting shoulder, arm, chest, abdomen, spine, and each impact ricocheted. Hierro. Naruto's internal spiritual pressure condensed at the surface of his skin and turned every Tenkai strike into a slap against an iron wall. Neji stared at his own hands. His fingers were reddening, his palms stung. "What?" he breathed. "Hierro," Naruto said. "Try again." Neji's pride did what training could not. He pressed forward. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Double the speed, double the power. Each palm strike, carrying the full weight of his bloodline and his training and his desperate need to prove that destiny was real and that he was right and that the world worked the way he needed it to work. 64 strikes, 64 bounces, 64 failures. Naruto stood there, hands still at his sides, and took every single hit without moving. His expression had not changed. His feet had not shifted. The 12-year-old boy had just weathered the full 64 palms of a Hyuga prodigy, and his response was to tilt his head and look at Neji, the way someone looks at a mosquito that has been trying very hard to do its job. The arena was silent. 10,000 people in the stands, and not one of them was breathing. Then Naruto moved. He did not use Sonido. He did not need to. He stepped forward, one step fast enough to blur, close enough to touch, and grabbed Neji Hyuga by the face. His fingers curled around the prodigy's forehead, his palm covering Neji's nose, his grip iron and absolute. Neji's hands came up instinctively. Rotation, he tried, chakra spinning from his tenketsu to form the Hyuga defensive barrier. Naruto drove him downward, straight down, through the arena floor. His arm pistoned and Neji's body followed, and the arena floor exploded inward, a crater 6 feet wide and 3 feet deep, stone and earth erupting outward in a shower of debris. Neji's body at the center, broken and gasping, the air driven from his lungs by the impact. The crater settled. Dust rose and fell. Naruto stood at the edge of it, his hands still extended from the slam, and looked down at Neji Hyuga lying in a depression of shattered stone. "The only destiny in this world is that the strong eat the weak," Naruto said. "Get up or stay down. That's the only choice you've ever had." Neji did not get up. The arena erupted. The sound hit like a physical force, 10,000 voices screaming, cheering, gasping, arguing, the collective release of an audience that had just watched something they would tell their grandchildren about. In the stands, Rock Lee was on his feet, his fists clenched, his eyes shining with an intensity that was equal parts admiration and challenge. Guy stood beside him, arms crossed, his expression unreadable for once. In the Hyuga section, Hinata Hyuga pressed her hands together, and her pale eyes were wet and wide. She watched Naruto climb out of the crater, watched him shake the dust off his hands, watched the way the sunlight caught his cyan eyes, and the way his whisker marks stretched when he grinned at the roaring crowd. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest, something that was bigger than the crush she had carried in the academy, something that frightened her a little and exhilarated her a lot. In the Kage box, the Kazekage, Orochimaru behind stolen skin, watched Naruto walk back to the competitor's box, and beneath the mask of another man's face, his golden eyes burned with a hunger that had nothing to do with the curse mark anymore, and everything to do with understanding what this child was. Hiruzen sat beside his disguised enemy and puffed his pipe and said nothing, but his hands were gripping the armrests of his chair hard enough to turn his knuckles white. Sasuke's match against Gaara was postponed to later in the bracket. Other matches played out, competent fights between competent genin, each one earning its cheers from the crowd. But the arena's energy had been recalibrated by Naruto's fight with Neji. Every subsequent match was measured against it, and every subsequent match fell short. When the brackets advanced and Sasuke finally faced Gaara, it was a real fight. Sasuke's Chidori screaming through the arena, his speed enhanced by a month of grueling training with Kakashi, his Sharingan tracking Gaara's sand with the desperate focus of a boy who needed to prove he belonged on this stage. Gaara's sand defense rose and reformed and rose again, the ultimate defense of the one-tail container. And when Sasuke punched through it with the Chidori and drew blood from Gaara's shoulder, the arena screamed. But Gaara screamed louder. The sand erupted. Gaara's transformation began, the sand coating his body, his face distorting, the one-tailed Shukaku pushing through its container's psyche and reaching for dominance. The arena shook. Spectators in the front rows leaned back from the wave of demonic chakra washing over them, and then the feathers fell. Genjutsu, a mass-scale sleep technique, blanketing the arena, putting civilians to sleep in their seats. The invasion had begun. Sound and sand shinobi burst from the stands. Explosions rocked the village walls. The barrier erected around the Kage box, Orochimaru's trap, the four violet flames formation, sealed the third Hokage inside with the man who had killed his student and now wore the Kazekage's face. Konoha was under attack. In the competitor's box, the Genin scattered, some to fight, some to evacuate, some to protect. Gaara's transformation accelerated as Temari and Kankuro dragged him out of the arena and toward the forest, the sand expanding around his body, the Shukaku's presence growing by the second. Sasuke pursued. Kakashi's order, track Gaara and stop the transformation, sent him leaping after the Sand siblings with the Chidori still crackling in his fist. Sakura was tasked with evacuating civilians. Kakashi entered the fray against the invading Sound Jonin. Naruto stood on the arena wall and looked at the village, his territory, burning. His eyes were not cyan anymore. They were luminous, bright, nuclear, a blue so intense it left after images on retinas. Sound shinobi poured through the streets below. Konoha defenders fought and died again. A giant snake summon, one of Orochimaru's personal additions, crashed through the northern wall and began demolishing buildings with its tail. And in the forest beyond the village, the one-tailed Shukaku was growing. Its spiritual pressure ballooned, expanding outward, the massive raccoon beast of sand rising above the tree line like a nightmare made solid, its jaw open, its yellow eyes rolling, its voice a screaming howl that carried for miles. Naruto looked at the Shukaku. The Shukaku was the size of a mountain. It was a tailed beast. A living disaster, a natural catastrophe given consciousness and malice, the kind of thing that ended villages and salted the earth where they had stood. Naruto grinned. Finally, he said, something worth killing. He vanished from the arena wall, sonido, the crack echoing off the burning buildings, and reappeared on a rooftop 100 meters closer to the forest. Another sonido, another rooftop. He crossed the village in 5 jumps, each one a thunderclap of displaced air, and landed on the last rooftop before the tree line, his katana in his hand. the Shukaku rising above him, its shadow covering half the village. He held Pantera horizontal. His other hand ran along the flat of the blade, slow, glowing, the spiritual energy condensing along the edge in a wave of cyan light. His hair rose. His whisker marks deepened. The pressure building around him pushed the trees away from him, their trunks bending, their roots tearing from the soil. "Grind," Naruto said, and his voice dropped into a register that was barely human, a vibration that came from a place deeper than his throat, deeper than his chest, deeper than this life. Pantera. The tornado of blue spiritual energy that erupted from Naruto Uzumaki was visible from every corner of the village, hidden in the leaves. It was a pillar of light, spiraling, violent, alive, pouring upward from his position with the intensity of a reactor going critical. The buildings nearest to him shook. Windows blew out. Roof tiles ripped free and flew into the vortex. The sound was a roar, the roar of something waking up after a very long sleep. When the light cleared, the boy on the rooftop was gone. In his place stood something else. Naruto's hair had grown, long, wild, mane-like, streaming behind him in the residual wind. White armor plated his forearms, his shins, his ribs, segmented and sleek, the exoskeleton of a predator designed for speed and violence. His hands had changed, each finger ending in a razor-sharp claw that gleamed in the firelight. A tail extended behind him, long and powerful, whipping back and forth with the restless energy of a hunting cat. His eyes were the same cyan, but slit-pupiled now, and they glowed in the shadow of his own mane. The Reiatsu coming off him hit the Shukaku, and the tailed beast stopped. It stopped mid-swing, mid-roar, mid-everything. Its yellow eyes swiveled toward the rooftop. The creature, ancient, powerful, insane, looked at the armored figure standing on the rooftop below it, and its body language shifted. Its sand rippled, its jaw closed. For one perfect, impossible second, the Shukaku hesitated. Then Naruto launched. Sonido in resurrection form was beyond anything the shinobi world had ever produced. He did not blur. He did not flicker. He was on the rooftop, and then he was at the Shukaku's eye level, 100 feet in the air, and the rooftop he had left cracked in half from the force of his departure. Desgaron! 10 energy blades erupted from his claws, one from each fingertip, towering constructs of cyan spiritual energy that extended to enormous length, each one wider than a man and longer than a building. They arced through the air in a sweeping slash, and they hit the Shukaku's right arm. The arm came off. The entire arm, from shoulder to claw, thousands of tons of compressed demonic sand separated from the Shukaku's body and fell to the earth in a cascade that buried the forest floor. The sand that composed it lost cohesion the moment the Desgaron blades passed through it, the spiritual energy disrupting the chakra that held the beast together. The Shukaku screamed. The sound was loud enough to crack glass across the village. Naruto did not give it time to recover. He folded his Desgaron blades, pulled back his right arm, and fired. Gara de la Pantera! 5 explosive projectiles, launching from his clawed fingers with the speed of bullets, each one a compressed package of spiritual energy that detonated on contact. They hit the Shukaku's chest in a tight cluster and exploded inward. The beast's torso blew open, sand erupting outward in a shower, and through the gap, deep inside the construct, Gaara's true body was visible. Small, pale, unconscious, held in place by tendrils of sand. Naruto dove through the gap. Inside the Shukaku's chest was a nightmare of churning sand and howling wind and the raw spiritual pressure of a tailed beast at close range. It pressed against Naruto's Hierro and found it wanting. He pushed through, claws digging into the sand walls for purchase, tail whipping behind him for balance, and he reached Gaara, his clawed hand wrapped around the front of Gaara's shirt. He pulled. The Shukaku's tendrils fought him. They wrapped around his arms, his legs, his tail, trying to pull him into the construct, trying to absorb him, trying to consume the thing that was tearing it apart from the inside. Naruto's Reiatsu flared, a detonation of spiritual pressure from inside the beast's own body, and the tendrils disintegrated. The sand around him blew outward. He erupted from the Shukaku's chest, Gaara in one hand, and the beast behind him began to collapse. Without its container, without the conscious anchor that held its form, the Shukaku's massive body lost cohesion and crumbled, thousands of tons of sand cascading to the earth, A mountain falling, the forest disappearing under a wave of displaced earth. Naruto landed at the edge of the impact zone, his armored feet touching down on solid ground. Gaara's unconscious body cradled in one arm. Around him, the world was a wasteland of fallen sand and broken trees, and the settling dust of a tailed beast's defeat. The Pantera resurrection faded. The armor dissolved, the claws retracted, the tail vanished. The mane shortened back to spiky blonde. Naruto stood in his normal clothes, his katana reappearing at his back, his cyan eyes dimming from nuclear to their usual burning intensity. He laid Gaara on the ground. The boy was breathing, shallow, strained, his face twisted in unconscious anguish. The seal on his forehead pulsed with residual demonic chakra. Naruto crouched beside him. Temari and Kankuro arrived moments later, stumbling through the devastation, their faces white with terror and exhaustion. They found their brother lying on the ground with the leaf genin crouched beside him, and they froze, because the forest behind Naruto was gone, and the Shukaku was gone, and the landscape looked like a god had reached down and scooped out a handful of the earth and thrown it away. "He's alive," Naruto said, his voice stripped of its usual aggression. He sounded tired for the first time in the story. "You're a container too. Difference is you let it own you." He said it to Gaara, who could not hear him, but it was not really for Gaara. It was for himself. He stood. He looked at Temari and Kankuro. "Take him home," he said, "and next time your village decides to invade mine, make sure you send something that can actually take me." He walked back toward Konoha. Behind him, Temari sank to her knees beside Gaara and held her brother's hand, and Kankuro stood guard, and neither of them said a word about the boy who had just dismantled their village's ultimate weapon. The invasion's aftermath was a wound that Konoha bled from for weeks. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, stood atop the roof of the arena and fought Orochimaru in a battle that shook the village to its foundations. The god of shinobi against the prodigal son turned monster. Enma the Monkey King deployed, all 5 elements wielded, the full spectrum of jutsu that had earned Hiruzen the title of Professor Unleashed against the man who had been his most talented student and his greatest failure. Naruto arrived at the barrier in time to see the end. The Reaper Death Seal, the same technique that had killed his father, appeared behind Hiruzen, its spectral arms reaching through the old man's body and into Orochimaru's. Hiruzen seized Orochimaru's arms, not his soul, his arms. And the Reaper's hands closed around them, and Orochimaru screamed as the limbs were ripped from his body on a spiritual level, dead and useless from shoulder to fingertip. The barrier fell. Orochimaru's Sound 4 bodyguards collected their wounded master and fled. Anbu gave chase and failed to catch them. Hiruzen did not die. He staggered, collapsed, was caught by Kakashi and 2 Anbu, and was carried to the hospital with his life intact, but his body broken. The Reaper Death Seal had taken years from his life, had aged him a decade in 10 minutes, had burned through his chakra reserves and left him a husk of the man he had been. But he was alive. Naruto stood outside the hospital room and listened to the monitors beep and watched the old man sleep, and his face was blank, and his hands were fists, and he said nothing. Kakashi found him there an hour later. "He's going to recover," Kakashi said. "It will take time, but he's strong." "He's old," Naruto said, "and this village needs more than an old man on his back." Kakashi looked at his student. "What are you saying?" Naruto's jaw tightened. "I'm saying this village is mine, and I need to be strong enough that nobody ever has to fight in my place again." It was the closest Naruto had ever come to expressing love for anyone in this village, and it came out sounding like a declaration of war against the universe itself. Kakashi heard it for what it was. "He'd be proud to hear that," Kakashi said. "Don't tell him," Naruto said. "He'll get sentimental." He walked away from the hospital with his katana on his back and the weight of a village on his shoulders and the look in his eyes of something that had just found a reason to care that went beyond dominance. The weeks that followed the invasion were reconstruction, grief, and politics. Hiruzen's injuries left a power vacuum. The village council proposed a 5th Hokage to serve while the 3rd recovered. Jiraiya of the Sannin, the Toad Sage, the author, the legendary pervert, arrived in Konoha with a wide grin and a stack of signed books and the assignment to bring back Tsunade Senju, the last viable candidate for the hat. He asked for Naruto as his traveling companion. Kakashi agreed. The road trip was where Jiraiya learned what Naruto was, and the learning curve was steep. Jiraiya tried to teach Naruto the Rasengan, the spinning sphere of pure chakra that Minato Namikaze had created, the A-rank technique that required perfect chakra control and 3 stages of mastery. Naruto listened to the explanation, watched the demonstration, and formed the Rasengan on his 3rd attempt. That took your father 3 years to develop, Jiraiya said, staring at the perfect sphere spinning in Naruto's palm, and 6 months to master. My chakra does what I tell it, Naruto said, and his expression suggested he did not understand why this was unusual. His spiritual pressure was a force of nature. Shaping it into a sphere and spinning it was trivial compared to compressing a Cero. Jiraiya sat down on a rock and stared at the sky and wondered, not for the first time and not for the last, exactly what Minato had sealed inside his son alongside the fox. Tsunade was drinking in a gambling town when they found her. She was beautiful and miserable and angry and drunk. A woman who had lost everything that mattered to her and had fled from the village rather than face the empty rooms. Her assistant Shizune hovered nearby with the anxious energy of someone who had been trying to save a drowning person who did not want to be saved. Be the Hokage, Jiraiya told her. No, Tsunade said. The title is a death sentence. Naruto, who had been leaning against the wall of the bar with his arms crossed and his patience rapidly depleting, spoke. Then you're a coward. The bar went still. Jiraiya flinched. Shizune's hand went to her weapon pouch. Tsunade's amber eyes, the eyes of the world's greatest medical ninja, the granddaughter of the god of shinobi, lifted from her sake cup and locked onto the 12-year-old with the audacity to call her what she was. What did you say, Brad? I said you're a coward. You lost people. So did everyone else. You ran away. Most people don't. The village needs a Hokage, and you're sitting here drinking yourself stupid because you're too afraid to go back and do your job. Tsunade stood. Her chair flew backward. The killing intent that radiated off her was Sanin level, a wave of murderous pressure that turned every civilian in the bar pale and sent the bartender diving behind the counter. Naruto did not move. His expression did not change. You're strong, he said. I can feel that. You might be the strongest person I've met who isn't a corpse or a snake, so stop wasting it. Tsunade looked at him for a long time. She looked at Jiraiya, who shrugged with the helpless expression of a man who had stopped trying to predict what his travel companion would say. She looked at Shizune, who was staring at Naruto with an expression somewhere between horror and admiration. You remind me of someone, Tsunade said. 2 someones. I don't care who I remind you of. I care whether you're going to do what needs doing. Tsunade picked up her sake cup. She drained it. She set it down upside down on the bar, and the gesture was final. You've got a mouth on you, brat. And you've got a headband you're wasting. Tsunade agreed to return to Konoha. She would later tell Shizune that the brat with the blue eyes was either the bravest or the most insane person she had ever met, and either way, she respected the hell out of him. The return to Konoha was interrupted by Itachi Uchiha and Kasame Hoshigaki, 2 Akatsuki members, S-rank criminals, each one a walking catastrophe, intercepted Naruto and Jiraiya on the road outside a small town. They were here for the Nine Tails container. They were here for Naruto. Itachi stood with his Sharingan, his Mangekyo Sharingan, spinning in eyes that held the horror of a family massacre and the weight of a mission that had eaten him alive from the inside out. Kasame stood beside him, Samahata on his shoulder, grinning the grin of a shark that had just spotted blood in the water. Naruto Uzumaki, Itachi said. His voice was ice, smooth, emotionless, the voice of a man who had burned every emotion out of himself with the fire he had used to destroy his family. You will come with us. Or what? Naruto said, and the question was genuine. He wanted to know what they planned to do if he refused. He wanted them to try. Itachi's Mangekyo spun. Tsukuyomi, the Genjutsu, the nightmare technique, the world of absolute control where Itachi could torture a victim for 72 hours in a single second, deployed from his left eye and struck Naruto full in the face. It lasted half a second. Naruto's Reiatsu, the spiritual pressure of a soul that had been forged in the death dimension of Hueco Mundo, tempered in the wars of Aizen, broken and rebuilt and broken again, rejected the Tsukuyomi the way a body rejects a bad transplant. His spiritual pressure collapsed the illusory world from the inside, tore through the Genjutsu's framework, and snapped the technique in half. Itachi flinched, an actual flinch, the first involuntary reaction many claim to have ever seen from the man, and blood trickled from his left eye. "Nice try," Naruto said. He drew his katana. "My turn." Jiraiya stepped in before the fight could escalate. The Toad Sage slammed his palm on the ground, summoning Toad Mouth Bind, and the corridor of the building they were standing in transformed into the interior of a toad's esophagus, the walls closing in with acidic, muscular contractions. Itachi grabbed Kasame. Amaterasu! The black flames erupted from his right eye and burned through the toad's stomach wall, creating an escape route. The two Akatsuki fled through the opening, pursued by black fire and the sound of Naruto's voice behind them. "Don't forget my name!" Naruto called after them, and the words carried through the burning corridor like a promise. Itachi ran. He had come to capture a container, and he had found something that shrugged off the Tsukuyomi like rain. And the man who had annihilated the Uchiha clan in a single night was running from a 12-year-old. Jiraiya released the Toad Summon and looked at Naruto. "You broke the Tsukuyomi." "It tried to get in my head," Naruto said, sheathing his katana. "Nothing gets in my head." "Naruto, that technique has never been broken by anyone in the history of... Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "I understand you're impressed. Can we keep moving? I promised the old lady I'd walk her back to the village, and I don't like breaking my word." Jiraiya followed him, shaking his head, and the burning corridor of a dead technique smoldered behind them. And somewhere in the distance, Itachi Uchiha was bleeding from his eyes and reconsidering every assumption the Akatsuki had made about their target. Tsunade took the hat. The fifth Hokage stepped into office with the authority of a woman who had punched through mountains and the hangover of a woman who had drunk through countries, and Konoha steadied on its axis. Hiruzen recovered, retired properly, and spent his remaining days smoking his pipe on his porch and watching the village he had protected for 50 years grow into something new. He visited Naruto once at the boy's apartment, and they sat together in comfortable silence, and the old man said, "You are going to be something this world has never seen, Naruto." Naruto said, "I already am." Hiruzen laughed, a real laugh, deep and warm, the laugh of a man who had earned his rest. "Yes," he said, "I suppose you are." The normalcy lasted 3 weeks. Sasuke Uchiha left the village at midnight, walking out the gate with his hands in his pockets and his curse mark pulsing, and his heart full of a poison that Orochimaru had planted and Naruto's existence had fed. He was going to the snake. He was going to take whatever power Orochimaru offered, whatever the cost, because the gap between himself and Naruto was a canyon he could not cross with anything Konoha had to give him. And the desperate, furious, damaged thing inside Sasuke that Itachi's betrayal had created would not let him rest until the gap was closed. Sakura found him at the gate. She begged. She cried. She told him she loved him. She told him the village was his home. She told him everything her heart could articulate, and every word hit the wall of Sasuke's resolve and fell. "You're annoying," Sasuke told her, and hit her with a genjutsu that put her to sleep on the bench, and walked into the night. The report reached Tsunade by dawn. She assembled the retrieval squad, Shikamaru Nara leading, with Choji Akimichi, Neji Hyuga recovered, humbled, and fighting with a new ferocity born from having his worldview destroyed, Kiba Inuzuka, and Rock Lee joining from the hospital against medical advice. They were given the mission briefing. They were given the tactical plan. They were given their assignments and their route and their estimated intercept points. Naruto was not at the briefing. Naruto had left the village 3 hours before the briefing started. He had felt Sasuke's spiritual signature move, felt it shift from its usual position in the Uchiha compound, felt it pass through the village gate, felt it accelerate into the forest with the single-minded trajectory of an arrow leaving a bow. And Naruto had known immediately, with the instinct of a predator who had been watching his rival circle the drain for months, exactly what was happening. He packed his katana. He pulled on his jacket. He walked to the village gate and past the guards, who looked at him and looked at each other and decided, collectively, that stopping Naruto Uzumaki was above their pay grade. He ran. He did not use sonido. He ran, feet on branches, wind in his hair, his spiritual pressure extended forward in a cone of pesquisa that tracked Sasuke's signature through the forest. 3 kilometers. 10, 20. The retrieval squad was behind him, hours behind, fighting the Sound Four, Orochimaru's bodyguards deployed as an escort for the defecting Uchiha. Shikamaru fought Tayuya in the forest, his shadow technique stretching and straining against her flute-based genjutsu. Choji consumed the Akimichi clan's forbidden pills and fought Jirobo, the Earthwall giant, in a battle that left him collapsed and near death but victorious. Neji fought Kidomaru, the spider archer, in a battle that tested every lesson his defeat at Naruto's hands had taught him. And he won, because the boy who had believed in destiny had learned to fight against it. Kiba and Akamaru fought Sakon and Ukon, the conjoined twins, in a brawl of claws and fangs and transformation jutsu. Rock Lee, fresh from surgery, arrived to help when things looked worst. Each fight was real. Each fight cost something. The retrieval squad bled for this mission, and their sacrifices were the sacrifices of comrades, of friends, of people willing to put their bodies on the line for someone who had chosen to leave them. But Naruto was already ahead, already past the bodyguards, already closing. The Valley of the End appeared through the trees, 2 massive statues flanking a waterfall, Hashirama Senju on one side and Madara Uchiha on the other, their stone hands locked in the seals of their final battle, the water cascading between them into a river that carved through the valley like a vein. Sasuke stood on top of Madara's head. Curse mark level 2, fully transformed, the hand-shaped wings extending from his back, black and leathery, his skin gray, his eyes ringed with the markings of Orochimaru's parasitic power, his Sharingan spinning in eyes that were no longer entirely human. He looked down at Naruto standing on the riverbank below. "I knew you'd come," Sasuke said, and his voice was different, deeper, rougher, roughened by the power coursing through him and the choice he had already made. "Yeah," Naruto said, "I figured you'd do something this stupid. This isn't stupidity, this is evolution. This is me taking the power I need to." "To what?" Naruto's voice cut through Sasuke's monologue. "To kill your brother? To catch up to me? Which excuse are you going with today?" Sasuke's face twisted. The curse mark pulsed. His wings flared. "Shut up! You've never understood. You've never known what it's like to watch someone take everything from you, to be powerless, to be weak," Naruto finished. The word was a door closing. You were weak. You felt weak. And instead of getting stronger on your own, you sold your soul to a snake, and you think that makes you my equal. Sasuke's Chidori ignited. The technique screamed to life in his hand, but it was different now, corrupted by the curse mark. The lightning was black, crackling with malevolent energy. The sound it made less a chirp of birds and more a shriek of something feral. Black Chidori, full power. Every ounce of his heritage, his training, his stolen power, his rage concentrated into a single point of black lightning. He dove from Madara's head. The wings folded back, and he fell like a meteor. The black Chidori leading aimed at Naruto's heart. He screamed, rage and loss and the desperate need to prove that he mattered, that he was enough, that the world could not keep looking past him and at the boy with the blue eyes. Naruto stood at the edge of the waterfall. The water fell behind him. The spray caught the light. He raised one open palm. The Cero formed, a sphere of blue energy, spinning, compressed, growing from a marble to a fist, to a sphere the size of a wagon wheel. The air around his hand distorted. The water beside him bent away from the energy. The ground beneath his feet cracked. He did not block the Chidori. He fired through it. Cero. The beam hit the black lightning head on. For one instant, one frozen, perfect instant, the two energies met, and the Chidori pushed against the Cero, and the air between them turned white, and the valley walls shook, and then the Cero swallowed it. The blue energy consumed the black lightning, broke through it, and continued forward into Sasuke's chest. The impact drove Sasuke backward through the air, through the waterfall, through the mist, and into the stone face of Madara Uchiha's statue. The stone cracked from base to crown. a fissure running up through the carved face of the legendary Uchiha, splitting the statue's forehead, showering rubble into the river below. Sasuke's body hit the stone and stayed there, embedded in the crater his impact had created, smoke rising from his chest, his wings disintegrating, the curse mark flickering and dying like a candle in a storm. The Chidori went out. The black lightning faded. Sasuke's eyes rolled back, the Sharingan deactivating, the Tomoe fading, his irises returning to their natural black, and his body went limp. The waterfall continued to fall. The river continued to run. The valley did not care about the ambitions of children. Naruto lowered his hand. The last wisps of blue energy dissipated from his palm. He looked at Sasuke hanging in the crater, broken, unconscious, smoking, alive. And his expression was the thing that made this scene what it was. It was not rage. It was not triumph. It was not sorrow. It was disappointment. The disappointment of a king watching a rival choose a lesser throne. The disappointment of someone who had, somewhere underneath the predator and the arrogance and the Hierro-hard exterior, wanted Sasuke to be better than this. Naruto walked through the river. The water came up to his waist and he pushed through it, and each step was heavy, and the weight was not physical. He reached the base of the statue and jumped, one leap, powered by Sonido, a single crack of sound, and landed on the ledge beside Sasuke's broken body. He looked at the Uchiha for a long time. "You're weak, Sasuke," he said. "The weak don't get to choose how they live." He grabbed the back of Sasuke's collar. He pulled him out of the crater. He slung the unconscious boy over his shoulder. One arm locked around Sasuke's legs, the weight balanced. The gesture practiced in the way that carrying dead weight always becomes practice for people who have done it before. He dropped from the statue, landed on the riverbank, and began to walk. 40 minutes later, the retrieval squad found him. Shikamaru was battered and limping, but alive. Neji was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but standing. Kiba was unconscious on Akamaru's back. Choji was being carried by a medical team that Tsunade had dispatched. Rock Lee was bandaged from head to toe and still moving under his own power, because Rock Lee did not understand the concept of stopping. They came through the trees and they saw Naruto walking toward them on the forest path. His katana was on his back. His hands were in his jacket pockets, both of them, because Sasuke was draped over his shoulder and balanced without needing to be held. He looked at the retrieval squad. They looked at him. "He's alive," Naruto said. "Somebody take him." Shikamaru exhaled, a long, shuddering breath, the breath of a 12-year-old who had just led his first real mission and lost more than he had been prepared to lose. He stepped forward and took Sasuke from Naruto's shoulder, and the weight of the unconscious boy passed between them. And something else passed too, an acknowledgement, a respect, the understanding between a leader who had held the line and a weapon who had ended the fight. "You didn't wait for us," Shikamaru said. "You were busy. We were fighting Orochimaru's elite guard, and I was fighting the guy who ran from them. Seems like we both had our hands full." Shikamaru looked at him for a long time. Then the shadow user smiled, tired, genuine, the smile of a genius who had just realized that some problems cannot be solved with strategy and must instead be solved by pointing Naruto Uzumaki at them. "Troublesome," Shikamaru said. They walked back to Konoha together. The forest thinned, the path widened. The village appeared on the horizon, battered, healing, its walls being repaired, its people moving through the streets with the determination of survivors. Smoke still rose from the northern district where the snake summon had crashed through. Construction scaffolding climbed the Hokage monument where Tsunade's face was being carved beside the four who came before her. Naruto walked at the front. His shadow stretched behind him, thrown long by the setting sun, and it covered his teammates and the unconscious Sasuke and the path they had all walked to get here. Sakura was waiting at the gate. She saw Sasuke on Shikamaru's back, alive, breathing, and her knees buckled and her eyes filled, and she pressed both hands to her mouth. She looked at Naruto. He was already walking past her, into the village, toward his apartment, toward his roof, toward the spot where he would sit with his katana across his knees and watch the sun go down over a village that did not love him yet, but was beginning to understand that it needed him. "Naruto," Sakura said. He stopped. "Thank you," she said, and her voice broke on the second word. He stood there, his back to her, his hands in his pockets, and for a moment, the briefest moment, his expression softened. It was a twitch, a flicker, a micro-movement of facial muscles that would have been invisible to anyone who did not know what to look for. "Don't thank me," he said. "Just get stronger, both of you, because next time, I might not feel like carrying him back." The next morning, Sasuke Uchiha lay in a hospital bed with monitors beeping and bandages wrapped around a torso that bore the circular burn of a Cero impact. Sakura sat outside his room with her hands in her lap, and her eyes red and her back straight, because she had decided, somewhere between the gate and the hospital, that she was done being the one who crumbled. Kakashi leaned against the wall across from her, his book open but his eye unfocused, reading nothing, thinking about the crater in the Valley of the End and the fact that his 12-year-old student had put it there the way most people put holes in paper targets. Naruto's apartment was empty. He had left before dawn, and the only evidence of his passing through the village that morning was the kunai-driven handle deep into the window frame of the council building. The blade had gone through the wood and into the stone behind it, buried to the ring, angled so that anyone sitting in the council chair nearest the window would see it first thing when they arrived for their morning session. The message required no translation. Nobody touched it. Nobody would touch it for 2.5 years. And when the council finally commissioned its removal, the mason who tried to extract it broke 3 chisels and gave up. 2.5 years passed. The legend skips the quiet years because legends are impatient things, and the audience waiting for a king's return does not want to hear about the long road that produced it. But the road existed, and it crossed nations, and it left marks. Jiraiya of the Sannin took Naruto Uzumaki across the shinobi world under the official designation of intelligence gathering. The intelligence they gathered was real. Akatsuki movements, safe house locations, financial networks, the names of missing nin who had taken the Red Cloud cloak, and the ideology beneath it. Jiraiya wrote reports. He wrote many reports. His reports grew stranger as the months accumulated, because documenting Naruto Uzumaki's development in standard mission report language was the equivalent of describing a hurricane using weather templates. Month 3. A Cloud Jonin challenged them at the border of the Land of Lightning for crossing without clearance. The Jonin was A rank, experienced, carrying a thunder technique in his back pocket that he deployed without warning. A bolt of concentrated lightning that hit Naruto in the chest at close range. The Hierro ate it. The electricity ran across the surface of his skin and ground it out through his sandals, scorching the earth beneath his feet. And the boy stood there with his arms crossed and his expression unchanged and said, "Are you done?" The Jonin spent 3 days in a hospital bed. Naruto ate barbecue in the lobby because the hospital's cafeteria had better food than the restaurants that had refused him. Month 7. A Tsuchikage-affiliated patrol tried to collect the Akatsuki bounty on Naruto's head. 6 stone shinobi, all Chunin rank or above, all operating under the assumption that numbers meant advantage. They came back disassembled, every weapon bent into shapes that weapons should not bend into, every piece of armor removed and stacked in a neat pile beside the road, every shinobi alive and conscious and profoundly rearranged in their understanding of what one person could do to 6 trained combatants without drawing a blade. Month 14. Jiraiya attempted to teach the Rasengan. The spinning sphere of pure chakra that Minato Namikaze had spent 3 years developing and 6 months mastering appeared in Naruto's palm on the 3rd attempt. Perfect rotation. Perfect compression. Jiraiya sat on a rock and stared at the sky and made a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a prayer. "Your father would have been insufferable about this," Jiraiya said. Naruto looked at the sphere spinning in his hand and said, "My chakra does what I tell it." He said it the way someone states that water is wet, a fact so obvious it barely required language. Month 19. The diplomatic reception in the Land of Water. The event was a formal gathering of Shinobi World representatives, drinks and information, the kind of occasion where dangerous people wore better clothes and conducted the same business they conducted in war rooms, except with wine in their hands and smiles on their faces. Jiraiya attended as Konoha's representative. He brought Naruto as security, which was the official paperwork designation for what was actually a calculated introduction. The reception hall was large, well lit, and populated by 40 people who carried weapons under their formal attire the way other people carried wallets. Diplomats from the land of water, envoys from smaller nations, intelligence operatives pretending to be trade delegates, the usual assembly of powerful people pretending to be civil. The ceilings were high. The windows overlooked the harbor. The wine was expensive. Mai Terumi stood near the far window, a glass in her left hand, her right hand free, talking to her assistant Ao with the easy authority of someone who owned the room and knew it. Copper hair fell past her shoulders. Amber eyes tracked the room between sentences, cataloging threats and assets with the automatic precision of a woman who had survived a civil war and won it. She was striking the way a blade is striking. The beauty was in the function, in the confidence of the form, in the absolute certainty of purpose radiating from every angle. Naruto crossed the threshold. The Reiatsu entered the room before he did, a wave of spiritual pressure that rolled across the assembled guests and made every instinct in every body recalibrate simultaneously. Diplomats gripped their wine glasses. Security personnel shifted weight forward. Al's hand drifted toward his weapon pouch in a motion so automatic it bypassed conscious thought entirely. The air in the room thickened. The temperature did not change, but the weight of existing in this space increased by a measurable degree. Mai Terumi turned toward the door. Her amber eyes found the source of the pressure. A 17-year-old in a dark jacket with a katana strapped across his back and cyan eyes that burned in the reception hall's ambient light. She registered the Reiatsu. She registered what it was doing to the room. She registered the fact that everyone else was leaning away from the door. She did not lean. She looked at him the way someone looks at a bonfire, aware of what it is, interested in how hot it burns, completely unwilling to step back from it. Her posture remained unchanged. Her wine glass remained steady. Her amber eyes held his cyan ones across 40 feet of diplomatic real estate, and the hold was mutual. "Jiraiya," she said, her voice carrying through the room with the command of someone who does not raise her volume because she has never needed to. "You brought your leash to a diplomatic event." "He doesn't wear one," Jiraiya said, arriving behind Naruto with his usual cheerful energy and a drink already in hand. "I know," Mai said, and she was still looking at Naruto. That's what makes it interesting. Naruto crossed the room without invitation. The crowd between them parted, unconsciously, instinctively, the same way people step aside when they hear something large approaching from behind. He stopped 3 feet from her, and the air between those 3 feet was charged with competing pressures. His Reiatsu pressed outward in constant low waves. Her killing intent sat coiled beneath her skin, leashed but present, ready. 2 apex predators standing in a room full of prey animals, acknowledging each other in real time. "You're the Mizukage," he said, "and you're the reason the Akatsuki has tripled its price on leaf containers." She took a measured sip of her wine. "I read the report about what you did to 3 of their scouts in the Land of Rain. Impressive work." "They interrupted my meal." Her mouth curved. The expression was brief and devastating. A controlled flash of something that was part amusement and part hunger and part the very specific satisfaction of finding an interesting thing in an uninteresting room. "Kirigakure is in the market for allies," she said. "The kind with teeth." "I'm not an ally," Naruto said. "I'm a king. Figure out the difference before you try to negotiate." She looked at him for a long moment. The background noise of the reception continued around them. Clinking glasses, murmured conversations, the machinery of diplomacy grinding on. But the space they occupied was separate from it, a bubble of intensity that the rest of the room could feel pressing against its edges. "You've got a mouth on you, Blondie," she said, "and you've got a village bleeding from a decade of civil war. Seems like we both have things worth discussing." Her eyes sharpened. The observation landed, precise, informed, delivered without hesitation or diplomacy. She set her wine glass on the windowsill behind her, a gesture that freed both hands and carried the implicit message that the conversation had just become serious enough to deserve her full attention. The conversation that followed lasted 4 hours. They moved from the main hall to a private alcove at the back of the reception space, and then from the alcove to the building's upper terrace when the room grew too warm and too crowded. Jiraiya fell asleep on a couch in the lobby. Security personnel from both delegations stood at opposite ends of the hallway and tried to maintain professional postures while listening to a Kage and a 17-year-old have what sounded like equal parts political negotiation, strategic briefing, and argument. They argued about the Land of Water's reconstruction timeline. They argued about Akatsuki's interest in tailed beast containers and what it meant for inter-village defense cooperation. They argued about whether Konoha's isolationist tendencies were strategic prudence or cowardice, and Naruto said cowardice and Mei said both. And there was a silence after that where they looked at each other and recognized something: the willingness to name the thing that everyone else danced around. By the end of it, Naruto had committed nothing formal, offered nothing concrete, and given the Mizukage more to think about than any diplomat she had spoken to in 3 years. She had given him the same. They had arrived at the specific kind of understanding that exists between people who are too honest to lie to each other and too proud to pretend they agree when they do not. When they left the building, he glanced back once at the window where she was still standing. She was watching him go. She raised 2 fingers, a marker, a placeholder. The gesture said, "You and I are unfinished." He turned forward and kept walking, and the grin that crossed his face in the dark hallway was different from his usual one. Less predatory, still present, still sharp, still entirely him, but layered with something new. Something he had never needed a word for before this evening. The remaining months passed in the currency of violence and distance. Jiraiya's reports grew increasingly unusual. Subject engaged 3 missing 9 in the Land of Hot Springs. Duration, 11 seconds. Property damage, minimal. Missing nin status delivered to local authorities, conscious, deeply reconsidering their life choices. And subject broke the Rasengan's compression limit today. The resulting detonation cleared a training field and 2 acres of surrounding forest. Subject's comment: too much spin. My comment: requesting hazard pay. Naruto's Reiatsu grew the way muscles grow, through use, through stress, through the constant application of pressure against things that pushed back. The techniques that had terrified Genin at 12 became something else at 17. His base form spiritual pressure suppressed weak ninjutsu in his immediate radius. His pesquisa extended further, reading spiritual signatures across distances that made Jiraiya's sensor network look quaint. His sonido covered more ground per jump. His Cero hit harder, burned longer, carved deeper. The evolution was silent. There was no dramatic moment of breakthrough, no mountaintop revelation. The king simply grew into his crown, the way all kings do, gradually, constantly, until one morning the world looked at him and realized the thing it had been watching become dangerous had become inevitable instead. At 17 and a half, standing on a cliff in the Land of Wind, watching a sunset that painted the desert orange, Naruto sheathed his katana and looked east, toward home, toward the village that had tried to break him and failed and was about to receive him back. "Time to go," he said. Jiraiya looked at him from his seat on a nearby rock, his notebook open, his expression, the expression of someone closing a very long chapter. "You're sure?" "Akatsuki is moving. I can feel it. The pressure on the containers is increasing. Gaara's been targeted twice in the last 6 months." His jaw tightened. "I'm done being somewhere else while my territory needs defending." They traveled east, 2 weeks on the road, through forests and plains and the long approach to the Land of Fire. Jiraiya wrote his final field report on the last evening before they reached the village. Returning asset to Konoha. Asset classification has been upgraded from A rank to I'm running out of letters. The gate guards saw him first. A figure coming down the road at dusk, jacket collar turned up against the evening chill, katana across his back catching the last light. His stride was different from when he had left, broader, heavier, the walk of someone who had crossed nations and taken whatever they found in them and added it to themselves. One guard straightened. "Naruto, welcome back." Naruto walked past him without stopping. The other guard looked at his partner. Should we file a return report?" The first guard watched the figure disappear around the corner of the main street, and the air in his wake was still heavy, still pressing. File it under, the problem came home. He went to the Hokage Tower. Tsunade was behind her desk with a sake cup in one hand and a mission scroll in the other, her face carrying the particular tiredness of someone who has been running a village through reconstruction and political maneuvering for 2 years straight. She looked up when the door opened without a knock, and her expression went through 3 stages in rapid succession: recognition, relief, and the careful composure of someone who will not admit to either. "You look the same," she said. He sat across from her without invitation, put his feet on her desk, and met her eyes. "Akatsuki is making its move. We need to stop pretending the village can handle this through standard response teams." Her hand tightened around her sake cup. The ceramic creaked. "I know. That's why I'm glad you're back." He took his feet off her desk, stood, and walked toward the door. He stopped in the frame, one hand on the door jamb, his profile lit by the office lamplight. "Send me first. Next time something S-rank shows up. It saves time." He left. Tsunade stared at the empty doorway for 30 seconds, then poured herself a second drink. Her hand was steadier now. The village was steadier now. The heaviest thing in the Land of Fire was back inside its walls, and the weight of that was, paradoxically, a relief. The village reacted to his return the way ecosystems react to the reintroduction of an apex predator. The balance shifted. Civilians who had grown accustomed to the background anxiety of the post-invasion years felt something in their chests ease, because whatever was coming next, the thing standing between them, and it was back. Jonin, who had been following his reputation through intelligence reports from other nations, watched him walk through the market district and adjusted their mental rankings in real time. Sakura found him on a training ground the next morning. She had grown in 2 years, harder, sharper, her medical training under Tsunade evident in the precision of her movements and the confidence of her stance. Her pink hair was shorter, her hands were calloused. The girl who had cried at the gate was gone. In her place stood someone who had decided that crying was a luxury she would earn back when she was strong enough to afford it. "You look terrible," she said. "I'm glad you're back," was what she meant, and they both knew it, and neither of them acknowledged the translation. Kakashi materialized from a rooftop, or a tree, or the space between moments where Kakashi apparently lived when he was not being seen. His book was in his hand, his visible eye curved into its characteristic crescent. "My first impression of your return is that you're going to cause me paperwork." Naruto walked past him. "Start writing." On a training ground across the village, a figure paused mid-strike. White eyes, pale, steady, devoid of the nervous flutter that had characterized them 3 years ago, tracked a familiar spiritual pressure passing through the village's eastern district. Hinata Hyuga lowered her hands from the gentle fist form she had been drilling. She stood very still, feeling the weight of the Reiatsu moving through her village, and her heart did something it had been doing since she was 8 years old. Except now it did it without the stammer, without the flush, without the downcast eyes. It did it with clarity. She had trained for this. 2.5 years of training in the direction of someone she wanted to be worthy of standing near. She would not approach him. She would not chase. She would simply be present and ready and visible. 2 days later, he passed through the training ground where she worked. She was mid-kata, moving through the forms with a fluidity that would have made her father's jaw tighten with something adjacent to pride. Naruto's path took him past her position. She did not stop. She did not call out. He slowed. Just for a step, the briefest deceleration, a half-second reduction in pace that someone watching would have needed to be looking for to catch. His eyes flicked to her. She was already watching, because her Byakugan was active, and she had known he was approaching since he entered the district. Their gazes met for a heartbeat. Her hands continued their form without missing a beat. His pace resumed. He moved on. The moment was small and enormous at once, and neither of them said a word about it. The Akatsuki moved within the week. The intelligence came through a sand messenger hawk. Frantic, coded, decoded by Konoha's cryptanalysis team in 4 minutes. The Kazekage had been taken. Gara of the Sand captured in his own village by two Akatsuki operatives who had brought enough firepower to level the outer wall and extract their target before the Sand's defense forces could reorganize. The One-Tail's extraction was beginning. Tsunade assembled the mission brief. The team roster was still being compiled when the gate guards reported that Naruto Uzumaki had left the village heading west at a speed that made tracking impossible. He had felt Gaara's spiritual signature stop moving 2 hours before the hawk arrived. He knew what stillness meant in a container. He ran. The desert at night was empty and vast, and he crossed it with a fury that was silent and absolute. Sanado carried him in explosive bursts, each one a crack of displaced air swallowed by the open sky, each one covering distance that would have taken a standard team hours. His pesquisa was extended to its maximum range, locked on the fading ember of Gaara's spiritual signature, the way a compass locks on north. Fading, weakening, running out of time. The cave was in a cliff face, sealed behind a barrier tag that would have stopped most intrusion teams. Naruto tore through it with his bare hand, his Reiatsu shredding the sealed structure on contact, and walked into darkness. Inside, a cavern large enough to echo. Gaara's body suspended in a web of spiritual and chakra chains. Pale and limp, the One-Tail's energy being extracted thread by thread through a technique that required time and concentration to complete. Sasori of the Red Sand stood at the cave's center, surrounded by 100 puppets, each one a former shinobi preserved in wood and poison, each one armed and aimed and waiting. Deidara circled above on a clay bird, the Akatsuki's explosive artist, his mouths already chewing fresh clay. "You've got bigger problems than the container, Blondie." Deidara called down, his voice echoing off stone. "C1, C2, C3? You want the whole menu?" "All I want," Naruto said, his voice flat and carrying in the dark, "is the Sand Kid back. Give him to me and I'll only break half of those puppets." Deidara's grin widened. He flicked a clay bird down from his perch, a C2 construct, wings spread, detonation charge packed into its core. It dove toward Naruto with the speed of an arrow and exploded on contact. The blast filled the cave with white light and roaring heat and the sound of stone cracking. Through the smoke, Naruto walked. His jacket's hem was singed. His hair was pushed back by the shockwave. His expression had not changed. His Hierro had eaten the C2 the way a mountain eats rain. "My turn," he said. Sonido launched him 20 feet straight up, a crack of displaced air, a blur of motion that Deidara's scope eye tracked too late. Naruto appeared behind the clay bird, already firing. A bala volley, 6 rapid-fire spiritual projectiles in under a second, shredded the construct's wings and body, and sent Deidara tumbling toward the cave wall in a shower of dissolving clay. The impact was wet and loud and final. Deidara crumpled against the stone and did not rise. Sasori's response was immediate and total. All 100 puppets launched. A curtain of poison-tipped blades, a formation of killing steel moving in synchronized waves. The air filled with the sound of clicking joints and whistling metal. 100 weapons aimed at a single target from every conceivable angle. Naruto landed on the cave floor. He drew his katana. He ran his bloody thumb down the flat of the blade. The blood hissing blue on contact, the energy building in the edge like a scream building in a throat. Grand Re Cero. The arc of spiked blue energy erupted from the blade in a sweeping horizontal slash. It passed through the puppet formation the way light passes through glass. Irresistible, total, the spiritual energy disrupting every chakra thread holding the constructs together. The sound was a symphony of splintering wood and breaking seals and severed connections. 96 puppets fell in pieces. The remaining 4 collapsed a half-second later as residual energy reached their cores. The cave floor was a graveyard of carved wood and scattered weapons. Sasori stood in the wreckage. His true form, the heart canister, the eternal teenager's body preserved in puppet, shell, was exposed and watching Naruto with an expression that had traveled past shock and arrived at philosophical reassessment. "What are you?" Sasori asked. His voice was quiet, measured, the voice of someone recalculating every assumption they had walked in with. "Your reason to have picked a different mission." Naruto stepped over puppet debris, sheathed his katana, and lifted Gaara from the extraction device. The chains dissolved at the touch of his Reiatsu, spiritual pressure overwhelming the technique's framework, collapsing it from the outside. Gaara's body was cold, his breathing was thin, but the one tail was still inside, the extraction incomplete, interrupted by seconds rather than minutes, Gaara alive by the margin that Naruto's speed had purchased. He turned back to Sasori. "You want to keep going?" Sasori looked at the devastation. 100 puppets, the work of 20 years, reduced to kindling. Deidara unconscious against the far wall. The extraction failed. The target retrieved. The 17-year-old holding a Kaj in one arm and a smoking blade in the other, standing in the center of it all without a scratch visible anywhere on his body. "Another time," Sasori said. "There won't be another time," Naruto answered and walked out of the cave into the desert night. Gaara woke 2 days later in a Suna medical facility. White ceiling, beeping monitors, the smell of antiseptic. And against the far wall, sitting with his katana across his knees and his eyes on the ceiling, the boy who had beaten him 3 years ago and had apparently decided that beating him gave him ownership. "You came alone," Gaara said. His voice was rough, the voice of someone whose throat had been raw from having a tailed beast partially ripped from it. "I got there in time," Naruto said, "barely." A silence settled between them. The monitor beeped. Sand whispered against the window outside. "Why do you keep saving me?" Gaara asked. Naruto lowered his gaze from the ceiling and looked at the Kazekage lying in his hospital bed. "Because you're mine to kill, if it ever comes to that. Nobody else gets to." The words sat in the air, then quieter, stripped of performance. "And it's never going to come to that." Gaara looked at the ceiling. Something moved in his expression, something that had been frozen since childhood and was slowly, painfully learning to thaw. "I see," he said. And then, after a pause long enough to contain a decision, "Thank you." Naruto stood. He sheathed his katana and moved toward the door. "Naruto," Gaara said. He stopped, hand on the frame. "If the Akatsuki sends others, stronger ones, come back." Naruto glanced over his shoulder. The grin was small, real, the version that meant something. "Count on it." He returned to Konoha with the Akatsuki intelligence file spread in his memory and a name burning in the center of them. Toby, the masked man pulling strings behind the organization. And behind Toby, older and more terrible, written in every coded reference and every pattern of movement, the architecture of Madara Uchiha's ambition, reaching from beyond the grave. The 5 Kage summit was called 6 months later, pushed by the Kazekage and the Mizukage arriving independently at the same conclusion. The Akatsuki threat could not be handled by any individual nation. The shinobi world needed to make a decision together, or Madara Uchiha would make it for them. The summit location was neutral ground, a fortress city in the land of iron, snow-covered and cold, administered by samurai who bent the knee to no Kage. Mifune, the samurai captain, greeted the arriving delegations in the main hall with 30 years of diplomatic composure and a calm that came from knowing his guards were the finest swordsmen on the continent. He greeted Naruto last. His eyes lingered. "I have heard of you," Mifune said. "Is that a problem?" Mifune shook his head slowly. "The samurai who were standing guard inside have asked to be reassigned. I approve the request." Naruto walked past him without responding. The corners of his mouth twitched upward. Mei Terumi arrived an hour later with Ao, Chojuro, and 3 additional escorts who were moved with the tightly controlled anxiety of people who understood what the broken moon meant and were walking into the home territory of the person who broke it. She entered the summit hall, and the room organized itself around her presence. Delegates shifting, conversations adjusting, the geometry of the space bending toward authority. She saw him against the far wall, arms crossed, eyes already on her. "You grew," she said by way of greeting. 2.5 years does that. "Did Jiraiya teach you anything useful?" "He taught me how to make toads appear. I already knew everything else." She smiled, full, brief, devastating in its brevity. "You know, I still haven't decided whether you're the most arrogant person I've ever met or just the most honest. They're the same thing." He pushed off the wall and fell into step beside her as she moved toward her seat. The breach of protocol. Different delegations, security positioning, the careful choreography of summit etiquette went unmentioned. Nobody present wanted to be the person who told Naruto Uzumaki where to stand. "The land of water needs a formal Konoha alliance," she said. Her voice dropped low enough for only him, her eyes forward. Kirigakure's relationship with the Akatsuki during the Yagura years left scars my village is still bleeding from. We're vulnerable. What's in it for the leaf? Her eyes flicked to him. Me saying please? He snorted and almost laughed, a sound she collected and filed in the place where she kept things that interested her. I'll talk to the Hokage, he said. The summit proceeded across 2 days. Political positioning between the Tsuchikage and the Raikage. The Kazekage holding the center with the silence that Naruto recognized because he had taught Gaara without meaning to. That silence carried further than noise. The delegations maneuvered and the 5 Kage traded concessions the way merchants traded silk. On the second day, Toby phased through the summit chamber's wall. He appeared in the center of the room. Orange mask, dark cloak, the single visible Sharingan eye spinning behind the hole in his disguise. His chakra signature was wrong, layered, distorted, the spiritual equivalent of something wearing another thing's skin. Good evening, Toby said, and his voice carried the amused weight of someone who has been watching a conversation he finds adorable. I have an announcement. Every Kage in the room tensed. Security teams drew weapons. The Raikage's fist crackled with lightning. Mei stood, one hand forming seals beneath the table. Gaara's sand was already moving. The Eye of the Moon plan, Toby continued. The infinite dream. Every living being in this world, asleep and safe forever, dreaming what they wish to dream, and all it requires. Naruto pushed off the wall. Sonido. The crack swallowed the end of Toby's sentence. He was across the room in the space between one word and the next, his hand closing around the orange mask before the space-time user could phase away. He had him by the face. The mask cracked at the edge, a hairline fracture running from the eye hole to the cheek, spreading under the pressure of fingers that could crush stone. Toby stopped. The ancient intelligence behind the mask registered the grip, the Reiatsu, the spiritual signature of the hand that was holding it. It recognized what it was holding by. I know who you are, Naruto said. His voice carried no grin, no performance. It carried the absolute zero of genuine threat. And I know what you're planning, so I'm going to say this once. His grip tightened. The mask crack deepened. Come for my village, and I will not leave enough of you for the history books. Toby's space-time technique activated. His body became intangible, phasing through Naruto's grip like water through a net, and he vanished, sucked into the dimension behind his eye, gone between one heartbeat and the next. Naruto's hand closed on empty air. 3 seconds of silence filled the summit chamber. The Raikage looked at the empty space where Toby had been. He looked at Naruto. You nearly had him. His voice carried respect, genuine respect, which from Eye of the Cloud was equivalent to anyone else dropping to their knees. I'll have him eventually, Naruto said. He turned back toward the wall. Finish the summit. He wants us scared enough to stop talking. Refuse him that. Gaara across the room watched Naruto walk back to position with steady sea-green eyes. He said nothing. He resumed his seat. The summit continued. That night, after the delegations scattered to their quarters and the samurai guards changed shifts and the building settled into the particular quiet of a place holding too many powerful people in too small a space, Naruto sat on the building's roof. He had found the highest point within 5 minutes of arrival, because the highest point was always his, in every building, in every city, in every moment of his life. The snow-covered mountains surrounded him in every direction. The air was cold and thin and tasted of altitude. Mei climbed up without invitation. She sat beside him on the parapet, present, unhurried, her formal attire exchanged for a heavy coat that did nothing to diminish the authority she carried in every motion. The space between them was smaller than it had been at the reception 2 years ago. They were quiet for long enough that the quiet became comfortable, the specific comfort of two people who had both learned that silence is honest in a way that words seldom manage. You weren't going to kill him, she said. An observation, a fact placed between them for examination. He's a mask, Naruto agreed. Killing the mask doesn't kill what's wearing it. Your intel is better than ours. Your village is still bleeding from the bloody mist years. You've been managing a humanitarian crisis for 2 years. You haven't had time for good intel. She looked at him sharply. The sharpness was recognition. He had been paying attention. Across distance, across years, across the boundaries of their separate nations, he had been watching. "How long have you been watching the Land of Water?" she asked. "Since Zabuza told me what your village was under Yagura. That night on the bridge. I was 12. She was quiet for a long moment. Snow fell between them in thin, windless curtains. "He's dead," she said, "Yagura." "Yes, but the damage he did isn't." Another silence. The mountains were enormous and patient around them, and the cold was the clean kind, bracing instead of punishing, the cold of high places. "The formal alliance," she said. "Konoha and Kiri. I want to build it before the war starts." He looked at her. The glow from his eyes was blue in the white snowscape. "Then we build it." "Terms?" She met his gaze. Amber into cyan, fire into lightning. Two people who understood power because they were made of it. "Later," she said. "Tonight I'm just sitting on a roof." He looked back at the mountains. His mouth curved, the small version, the version that meant something beyond aggression. "Okay," he said. They sat until the cold made May's breath visible in clouds, and the stars above them were dense enough to cast shadows on the snow. She rose first, unhurried, and he did not tell her to stay, and she did not tell him she wanted to. They existed in the space of what was chosen rather than declared. Before the delegations departed the next morning, she found him in the public hallway, formal, brief, escorts present. "Terumi. Next time you're in the Land of Water, don't announce yourself. The gossip is exhausting." His grin was the wide one, the dangerous one, just for a flash. "Wouldn't dream of it." He walked away. Chojuro watched the Mizukage watch him go and made the tactical decision to say absolutely nothing about it. Itachi Uchiha was dying. The disease that had been eating him since before the massacre reached its final stage on a mountain in the Land of Lightning, in a safe house that smelled of medicine and dust, and his brother found him there because Itachi had made sure he would be found. They fought. Sasuke earned the victory. The Kirin technique, calling lightning from storm clouds. The desperate fractured Susanoo emerging from his body in pieces. Every technique he had learned in 2 years of Orochimaru's tutelage, deployed with the lethal precision of someone who had nothing left but this moment. Itachi let certain hits land because he was dying, and because Sasuke needed to win, and because the plan required the younger brother to believe he had surpassed the older. But Sasuke also earned hits that Itachi could not have dodged at full health. The truth was somewhere in between, a fight between a dying genius and a living one, and the living one was ready. Itachi died with a smile and 2 fingers against Sasuke's forehead. Tobi appeared in the aftermath. He fed Sasuke the truth, the Foundation's orders, the Konoha Council's edict, Itachi's impossible choice, the burden carried alone for a decade. He served it cold and precise and watched the devastation bloom across Sasuke's face and then harden into something useful. Sasuke turned toward Konoha with murder in his eyes. He made it 14 miles before the forest path ahead of him contained Naruto Uzumaki, standing with his hands in his pockets, blocking the road with nothing but his presence and the weight of everything that radiated from him. "You know," Sasuke said, and his voice was stripped of its old fire, replaced by something colder, quieter, more dangerous. "He died protecting them, the village that ordered it. The irony is monstrous." "Yes," Naruto said. Sasuke's jaw worked. He had expected resistance, a counter-argument, something to push against. "Yes?" The village gave him a mission that would have broken most people. It broke part of him. He carried it anyway. Naruto's eyes were level, steady. The cyan in them burned without flickering. "You can hate the village for that, or you can hate the people who gave the order. Burning the whole thing down is just wasted energy that won't bring him back. You don't get to tell me. I'm telling you the difference between strength and a tantrum." Naruto's voice dropped. It went quiet the way knives are quiet. "You want to fight someone? Danzo Shimura has been running a Black Ops division for 40 years that answers to no oversight. Start there. Or go back to your borrowed power and pretend grief is the same thing as a personality. Your call." The clearing held its breath. Sasuke's Sharingan spun, 3 Tomoe in each eye, the pattern accelerating, his killing intent building. The curse mark on his neck pulsed once beneath his collar, and Naruto's eyes snapped to it and went cold. "That mark is still active." Naruto said, "I know. I'm going to ask you one time to let Sakura burn it out." And if I say no, then we do this again. Except next time, I won't be in a good mood about it. Sasuke stood in the clearing for a long time. The wind moved through the trees around them. His breathing came through his teeth. Why do you care? He asked. And the question was genuine, stripped of rhetoric, stripped of performance, actually asking. Naruto looked at him. Because you're in my territory, and he said, and I don't let things in my territory rot. He turned and started walking back toward the village. Come home, Uchiha, or don't, but the curse mark comes out either way. Sasuke stood alone after Naruto disappeared through the trees. He looked at his own hands. The faint pulse of dark energy in his neck throbbed once more and went still. He closed his fists. He stood there for 2 hours in the fading light. Then he followed. Sakura burned the curse mark out in a 3-hour procedure that drew on every technique Tsunade had taught her. The operation left Sasuke unconscious and Sakura's hands trembling and the medical room smelling of burned chakra. Tsunade stood in the observation window and watched her student work and said nothing until the seal dissolved and Sasuke's vitals stabilized. You knew he would come back, Tsunade said. She was looking through the glass at Naruto, who stood in the hallway outside, arms crossed, back against the wall, eyes closed. I knew he had too much pride to do something that stupid, Naruto said without opening his eyes. Same thing. He pushed off the wall and walked away from the hospital into the evening air. Behind him, the Uchiha slept, dreamless, uncursed, and alive in a village that had wronged his family and was now being led by a man who would make sure the wrong was answered. Naruto would deal with Danzo. He would deal with it quietly and finally, and in a way that would leave the man's root foundation dismantled and its operator in a place where he could never give another order. But that was tomorrow's work. Tonight he walked home. Pain came at dawn. The morning started like every other morning. The sun rose, the market vendors set up their stalls, the academy opened its gates for the early class, and then 6 bodies descended from the sky above the village gate, and the morning ended. The 6 paths of pain moved through Konoha in coordinated devastation. The Deva path Shinra Tensei, the almighty push, collapsed buildings in expanding spheres of repulsive force. The animal path summoned creatures that crushed streets beneath their weight. The human path walked through defensive lines and tore souls from shinobi bodies with the gentle precision of someone pulling weeds. Konoha's Jonin engaged, and Konoha's Jonin fell, one by one, squad by squad, the village's defenses being dismantled with the methodical patience of someone who has all the time in the world and all the power they need, and views this destruction as a lesson rather than a battle. Naruto found the Deva path standing in the center of what had been a residential block. Rubble in every direction, dust still settling, the faint sound of someone calling for help from beneath a collapsed wall. His expression was empty, controlled. The cyan in his eyes had gone from burning to nuclear, bright enough to cast light on the rubble in front of him, bright enough to make the shadows flinch. You came to my village, he said. His voice carried nothing theatrical. It carried something beneath that, something ancient and enormous and very, very angry. Did you really think that was going to go well for you? The Deva path raised its hand. Shinra Tensei, the repulsive force, the technique that had been flattening buildings, the technique that had crushed Konoha's outer wall, the technique that represented the power of a god, hit Naruto's Hierro and stopped. His jacket rippled. His hair moved. His feet stayed planted. You're going to need more than that, he said. He drew his katana. The blade caught the morning light. Blood ran from his lip where he had bitten through it, deliberate, controlled, as the crimson sliding down his chin and along the flat of the blade. Grind. Pantera. The release exploded from him in a pillar of cyan light that tore the clouds above the village into spiral patterns and pressed the rubble around his position flat against the earth. The sound was the sound of something waking up, something that had been patient for 17 years and was done being patient. White armor materialized across his forearms, his shins, his ribs. His hair lengthened into a wild mane. His fingers extended into razor claws. His eyes went slit-pupiled and luminescent. The tail whipped behind him with the restless energy of a hunting cat that has caught the scent. Every active shinobi in the village felt the release. Every one of them stopped what they were doing and looked toward the sound. Naruto moved. Sonido in resurrection form. The sound it produced was less a crack and more a detonation. The air where he had been standing compressing and expanding in his absence, fast enough to shatter nearby windows. He appeared beside the animal path, mid-summon, and drove a death-grown slice through the summoning creature and the path's body in a single sweeping motion. 10 energy blades, enormous, each one wider than a man, carved through both targets before either finished existing. The summon dissolved. The path fell. Its Rinnegan eyes went dark. He was already at the Preta path. The chakra-absorbing body reached for him. Hands extended. Its technique designed to consume energy attacks, to swallow ninjutsu whole. Naruto fired a Cero into its chest at point-blank range. The Preta path's absorption field engaged, straining to consume the incoming energy, and failed. Because a Cero is Reiatsu, spiritual pressure from a dimension this world has never categorized, and no technique designed to absorb chakra can process what it has never encountered. The blue beam punched through the absorption field and through the path behind it and carved a trench in the street that steamed with residual energy. 2 paths down in 6 seconds. The Deva path activated Chibaku Tensei. A black sphere rose above the village, generating a gravitational field that began pulling everything within its radius upward. Buildings, streets, Earth itself tearing free and rising into a growing planetoid above the rooftops. The sky filled with debris. The ground beneath the village's center crumbled toward the sphere. Naruto looked up at it. He looked at the buildings being ripped from their foundations. He looked at the people below, civilians who were too slow, shinobi fighting to keep their footing, his village being consumed by a technique designed to imprison tailed beasts. He launched upward. Sonido carried him to the sphere's altitude in a single jump, and at the apex, suspended in air above his village, the planetoid growing around him, the gravitational field trying and failing to pull his armored body into the mass. He extended all 10 claws, Deshgaron, 10 blades of spiritual energy, each one towering, each one larger than they had been 3 years ago against the Shukaku. They arced through the sphere in a full circular slash that ripped it apart from the center outward. The mass detonated, the debris field exploding into a shower that fell away from the village rather than into it, pushed by the residual force of his Reiatsu, filling the space where the gravitational core had been. The Chibaku Tensei disintegrated. The sky cleared. He dropped back to the street. 3 paths remained. The Naraka path deployed the King of Hell, the enormous spectral entity, judge of souls, rising from the ground behind the path with its mouth open and its eyes searching. It looked at Naruto. It looked into him, at the soul beneath the soul, at the layered thing that was human on top and hollow underneath. And the King of Hell did something unprecedented. It pulled back. Its jaw closed. Its eyes shifted away from Naruto's face, the way a predator shifts its gaze from something it has identified correctly as above its tier. Get in line, Naruto told it. A Grand Ray Cero punched through the Naraka path's chest and obliterated the King of Hell's summon in the same detonation. The spectral judge collapsed into dissolving fragments. The path crumbled. The human path lunged, hands reaching for his face, the soul-ripping technique deployed in desperation. Naruto caught its wrist, twisted, and drove the path face first into the rubble with enough force to crater the street a second time. 1 path remaining. The Diva, the strongest. Naruto appeared behind it with Sonido and drove both hands down onto its shoulders, pressing it into the ground, pinning it against broken stone, his armored weight and Reiatsu holding it immobile. Tell Nagato, he said into the Rinnegan eyes that were watching him from inside the pinned body, that I'm coming, and that this argument ends today. He found the tower outside the village. He found the real Nagato, skeletal, wrecked, more machine than man, kept functional by receivers and will alone. He found Konan between them, her body positioned to die before she allowed anything through. His resurrection faded, the armor dissolved, the claws retracted. He stood in his regular clothes in the doorway. I'm here to listen, he said to Konan. If what he says is stupid, then we have a different conversation. But he gets to speak first. Nagato spoke. He spoke about Yahiko, the friend who died, the dream that died with him, the pain born from that death that had calcified into an ideology. He spoke about the cycle of violence between nations and the belief that only universal suffering could produce universal understanding. His Rinnegan eyes were dim. His voice was thin. He was a man who had burned himself out for a conviction. Naruto listened without interrupting. When the silence came, he let it breathe. Then he spoke. Pain doesn't teach people. It just makes them willing to do the same thing back to someone else for a different reason. He crossed the room and crouched beside the dying man. But you believed it, and you burned yourself to ash for it. That's worth something. He met Nagato's eyes. Use the Rinne rebirth. Bring back who you killed in my village. Call it even. You would let me live? Nagato's voice was barely a whisper. Now you've got maybe a month left in that body, Naruto said. Live it like it means something. Nagato looked at Konan. She was crying, silent, steady, her hands still raised in defense position because she had never stopped protecting him even when there was nothing left to protect him from. He looked back at Naruto. The Rinne rebirth technique activated. It took everything Nagato had remaining, every scrap of vitality, every thread of chakra, the last flame of a life that had been burning itself down for a decade. The dead in Konoha breathed again. Nagato went still. Naruto walked out of the tower and back toward his village. The reconstruction lasted months. The Fourth Great Shinobi War did not wait for it to finish. Madara Uchiha's declaration of war, delivered through Tobi's mask at the summit, confirmed through intelligence channels in the weeks after, unified the 5 nations faster than any diplomatic effort in history. The allied shinobi forces formed. Every nation committed its military. The greatest army the shinobi world had ever assembled took the field against an enemy that had spent decades preparing for this exact confrontation. Naruto deployed to the front lines before his orders were written. Tsunade sent a runner after him with paperwork. The runner did not catch him. The battlefield was vast, stretching across multiple countries, multiple fronts, the full machinery of 5 nations at war against an army of reanimated dead. Kabuto's Edo Tensei had raised shinobi from every era, legends pulled from the grave and forced to fight against the living. Their techniques and their grief weaponized by a man who viewed history as a supply closet. Naruto moved through the war the way a current moves through water. He tore through reanimated formations, Grand Rey Cero carving safe corridors through impossible positions, Sonito carrying him to crisis points before reinforcement teams could be dispatched. The Reiatsu he radiated while running through the battlefield suppressed the Edo Tensei zombies in his immediate radius, the spiritual pressure disrupting the death-adjacent energy that held the reanimations together, causing them to stutter and slow and lose cohesion within his zone of influence. Allied commanders routed their defense around him. He became a mobile fortress. Wherever he positioned, the line held. Wherever he moved next, the line followed. Killer Bee, the Eight Tails container, the Raikage's brother, rapping warrior and living weapon, crossed Naruto's path on the southern front, where a formation of reanimated swordsmen had been holding down 3 alliance squads. They did not plan. They did not coordinate. Bee appeared from the east, 8 tentacles deployed, rapping something about cutting the dead back to bed, and Naruto appeared from the west with his katana drawn and his grin on. And in the space of 20 seconds, they dismantled the formation from both sides. Bee's tentacles restraining, while Naruto's Desgaron sliced, Bee's ink blinding, while Naruto's bala volleys pinned. The reanimated swordsman went down in pieces.
Yo!
Leaf Fox, that was clean and mean, best tag team that the world's ever seen, Bee declared, offering a fist bump. Naruto looked at the fist. He looked at Bee. I'm going to pretend that rhymed. It rhymed, you heard it. My flow is tight, you should applaud it. Naruto was already walking away. It definitely didn't rhyme. Cold, Bee shouted after him, grinning enormously. You're cold, Blondie, but you fight like heat. The brief alliance produced genuine comedy in the middle of carnage, and the alliance shinobi who witnessed it would retell it for years with the bewildered energy of people who had watched an unstoppable force and an uncontainable personality occupy the same battlefield and somehow produce results. The Nine Tails cooperated during the war. The cooperation was silent, a door opening inside the seal, chakra flooding into Naruto's reserves alongside his Reiatsu, red bleeding into blue. The fox gave its power without words, without negotiation, without the friendship or redemption that softer stories would have required. It gave its power because Madara Uchiha had once chained it, once controlled it, once used it as a weapon against its will. And the Nine-Tails Kurama recognized Naruto Uzumaki as the most efficient weapon currently pointed at its oldest enemy. The logic was transactional. The logic was predator simple. The strongest tool gets wielded against the strongest threat. Naruto accepted the chakra without comment. He and the fox understood each other the way two predators sharing a territory understand each other, through the hierarchy of strength, through the economy of mutual benefit, through the oldest language in any world. Madara arrived when the tide began to shift. He descended onto the central battlefield from a height that made him look like a falling star. The reanimated body of the man who had fought Hashirama Senju to a standstill, possessing the Rinnegan now, the wood release stolen from the first Hokage's cells, and a Susanoo that covered the sky with its shadow. The enormous armored titan manifested around him in an instant. Perfect form, complete, a construct of purple chakra the size of a building, wielding blades that could cleave mountains. He fired a Susanoo arrow. It punched through a hillside and kept going. A second arrow hit the Alliance's eastern flank and deleted 200 meters of fortified position. A third aimed at the command post. Naruto intercepted it in mid-air. His body met the arrow's trajectory, and his Hierro took the impact, and his feet skidded backward through the air, pushed, strained, but unbroken. The arrow's tip pressed against his crossed forearms and could go no further. He redirected it downward into empty terrain, where it detonated harmlessly. He landed in Madara's path. The full Susanoo loomed above him, a titan casting its shadow across the blasted landscape, its wielder standing within its skull with the Rinnegan spinning and an expression that had been bored for 60 years. "The Nine-Tails container," Madara said. His voice resonated inside the Susanoo, amplified and enormous. "The reports about you have been the only interesting reading material this war has produced. You should have stayed dead," Naruto said. Madara's Rinnegan registered him fully, scanning the spiritual signature, the layered energy, the thing beneath the thing. "You face me without transformation, without the fox's cloak. Do you understand what I am?" Naruto's grin came, full width, every tooth, the whisker marks on his face stretching into something savage. "I face you like this because I don't need anything else, but I'll give you the whole thing if you can survive the first 30 seconds. Madara's Susanoo raised its blade. "Grind, Pantera." The second release of the war erupted from Naruto in a column of light that split the overcast sky above the battlefield. The transformation crashed over him, armor, claws, mane, tail, and the Reiatsu that detonated outward from the release staggered the Susanoo. The enormous purple construct shuddered, its feet sliding backward through the earth, displaced by spiritual pressure alone. Naruto launched. Sonido carried him to the Susanoo's chest height in a crack that split the air like a rifle shot. His claws extended. Desgaron materialized. 10 energy blades, each one longer than they had ever been, each one burning with the accumulated growth of 2.5 years of constant war against everything the world could throw at him. The 10 blades hit the Susanoo's ribcage. They tore through. The armored construct's chest plate shattered, purple chakra fragments exploding outward, the structural integrity of the Titan compromised in a single sweeping attack. Madara's expression shifted for the first time. The boredom vanished. What replaced it was focus. The focus of a man who had waited 60 years to find this feeling again. "There you are," Madara breathed. He reformed the Susanoo. Faster, denser. The second iteration was reinforced with wood release, branches growing through the chakra construct, armoring it with living wood that regenerated on contact with damage. He swung the Susanoo's blade, a weapon the size of a city block, arcing toward Naruto with speed that should have been impossible for something that large. Sonido. Naruto vanished from the blade's path and reappeared at the Susanoo's shoulder, driving his claws into the joint where arm met torso. The energy blades on his fingers carved through the wood-reinforced armor, and the Susanoo's arm came free, severed at the shoulder, the massive limb dissolving into dissipating chakra as it fell. Madara regenerated the arm in 3 seconds. He was Edo Tensei, Reanimated, immortal, a body that rebuilt itself from any damage given enough time. He swung again. Naruto evaded with Sonido and fired a Grand Ray Cero at the Susanoo's head. The blast hit. The head cracked. Wood and chakra exploded. Madara reformed it. Naruto hit it again. Madara reformed it again. The fight became a war of attrition against immortality itself. Naruto dealing damage faster than the regeneration could keep up. Madara tanking hits that would have killed anything alive and rebuilding through them. The landscape beneath them ceased to exist. Mountains cracked. The earth restructured. The terrain within a mile of their fight became a crater field. Each impact from Naruto's attacks, each swing from Madara's Susanoo, each Grand Ray Cero, and each wood release counter, reshaping the geography of the war. Alliance forces cleared the surrounding area on pure survival instinct, because what was happening in that zone was above the threshold of what bystanders could exist near and continue breathing. From a ridge 2 miles distant, the Raikage watched. His arm was bandaged. His lightning armor flickered with exhaustion. He stood on the ridge and watched two forces of nature collide and felt something he had never experienced in 30 years of battlefield command. The understanding that he was watching something that would define the next century of shinobi history. Gaara stood beside him, directing sand defenses across a miles-wide front. His attention split between his own combat zone and the distant lights of the Naruto-Madara fight. When Naruto's Reiatsu spiked, a surge that made everyone on the ridge take a half step back, Gaara looked toward it. He exhaled slowly. He turned back to his work. Madara broke free of his Susanoo. He stepped out of the construct's shell, abandoning the Titan form, descending to the ground, meeting Naruto in close combat with nothing but taijutsu and the Rinnegan, and centuries of experience. His hand-to-hand was extraordinary. His movements carried the muscle memory of a man who had spent a lifetime fighting the strongest person in history. Naruto matched him blow for blow, claws against palms, Sonido repositioning against Rinnegan prediction. The exchange was blindingly fast, their bodies moving at speeds that the human eye could only register as afterimages, each impact sending shockwaves through the already destroyed terrain. Madara activated the infinite Tsukuyomi. The moon, visible in the daytime sky, already bearing the crack from another life that had been written differently, became a mirror. Madara's Rinnegan connected with the surface, and a wave of light descended on the world. Mass Genjutsu, total, final. Every living thing on the planet caught in an eternal dream, a cage of desires, a prison of everything a person wanted enough to be trapped by. Across the battlefield, shinobi froze. Their eyes went blank. Their bodies went limp. Thousands of soldiers, brave, skilled, committed to this fight, dropped where they stood as the Genjutsu took them. On the ridge, the Raikage fell. Gaara fell. Every commander, every medic, every soldier across every front of the war fell into the dream. The light reached Naruto. It tried to take him. It reached into his mind, searching for the desire, the dream, the thing he wanted enough to be caged by, and it found the layered soul. It found Naruto Uzumaki on top, blonde and alive and burning with the need to protect what was his. It found Grimmjow Jaegerjaquez beneath, the predator that had survived extinction, that had fought its way to the top of a food chain in a death dimension, that wanted nothing, because wanting things was how prey got caught. The Genjutsu found nothing to hold on to. It found a soul that was too dense, too complete, too sovereign to be caged by a dream. It tried to build the prison and the foundation would not set. The walls would not stay standing. The thing inside this body was already awake in a way that the technique was designed to put to sleep. And it could not put to sleep something that had never truly been asleep. Naruto's Reiatsu detonated. A sphere of spiritual pressure expanded outward from his body. 100 meters, 200, 500, and the infinite Tsukuyomi broke in its path. Shinobi within the radius gasped back to consciousness. The light dimmed, cracked, failed where his pressure existed. He looked up at the moon. The mirror surface where Madara had anchored the technique. The cage that was trying to hold every living thing in the world. He held Pantera horizontal. His blood, already on the blade, already charged, hissed along the edge. The energy built. His claws tightened on the hilt. Kurama's chakra surged through the seal and into his arms, red blending with blue, producing white, the color of maximum compression, the color of everything at once. "Every king needs a domain," Naruto said, and his voice was barely audible, swallowed by the building energy. "Every domain needs a king. This world needed reminding which one I am. Grand Ray Cero." The beam that erupted from his blade was visible from orbit. It was a white line, pure, total, beyond the classification of any technique this world had ever produced. It hit the moon's surface at the point where the Rinnegan reflection anchored the genjutsu, and the moon cracked. A visible fault line split the lunar surface, running from the point of impact to the far edge, a permanent mark on the face of the sky. The mirror broke. The infinite Tsukuyomi collapsed across the entire planet. Thousands of people opened their eyes simultaneously and saw the sky above them changed forever. Madara fell from the air, the technique gone, the anchor destroyed. His reanimated body landed in the crater and stood and looked at Naruto across 50 meters of earth that had been reshaped so many times it no longer resembled any natural formation. "You are remarkable," Madara said. His voice carried something that had been absent from it for the entire fight: acknowledgement. The acknowledgement of a man who had spent 60 years waiting for a worthy opponent and had, at the end, found one that surpassed the wait. "You are genuinely remarkable. And you're a ghost that should have stayed buried," Naruto said. He raised Pantera. The blade still smoked white. His eyes, slit-pupiled, nuclear, carrying the combined light of his Reiatsu and Kurama's chakra, locked onto Madara's Rinnegan. "Don't look away," Naruto said. "You wanted this fight. Watch how it ends." Desgaron, all 10 blades. Driven into the ground around Madara in a closing circle, a cage of spiritual energy, a ring of rent earth, the battlefield signature of a king ending a conversation. The blades met beneath Madara's feet, and the spiritual disruption that resulted tore through the Otensei's framework from every direction simultaneously. Madara looked at the closing technique. His arms were at his sides. His expression was completion. The look of someone who had lived their entire existence toward one thing and had found, at the end, the closest thing to satisfaction available in a borrowed body. "In my era," he said, "you would have been the only one worth remembering." "In any era," Naruto said, "I would have been the same thing I am now." The Desgaron blades detonated. The spiritual pressure overwhelmed the reanimation technique's binding. Madara's body lost cohesion, the Edo Tensei cells dissolving, the soul beneath releasing, the ghost that had haunted the shinobi world for 60 years, finally returning to whatever came after. Dust. Silence. The crater smoking in the morning light. On the ridge, shinobi were standing, looking. The entire allied force that remained conscious was looking at the blast site. They saw the pillar of dissipating white light. They saw the broken moon above. They saw, in the settling dust, the figure standing at the center of everything, armored, maned, his tail whipping once before going still, his eyes scanning the battlefield the way a predator scans after the last threat has been ended. Someone started shouting. A single voice, raw and hoarse, from somewhere on the southern front. Then another voice joined it, then 10, then 100. Then the entire allied shinobi forces, thousands of voices, rising together, a roar of sound that was relief and disbelief and joy and the particular noise humans make when they have been staring at their own extinction and then watch someone else stare it down for them. The resurrection faded. The armor dissolved, the mane shortened. Naruto stood in his regular clothes, torn, scorched, marked by the longest fight of his life, and looked at the screaming army and the broken moon and the empty crater where history's strongest ghost had stood. He put his hand in his pocket. "About time," he said, and said it to himself, and to the thing beneath himself, into a dimension he had never visited in this body, but carried in his soul like a birthright that refused to be forgotten. 3 weeks after the war ended, Tsunade called him to her office. The village was halfway rebuilt. The construction was purposeful, faster than the post-pain rebuild, because the village had practice now, because the people filling the streets were determined in the way that people who have survived the unsurvivable become determined. The market district was louder than before. Children played in streets that had been rubble a month ago. The Hokage monument had new scaffolding, Tsunade's face being restored, the other 4 being cleaned of war dust. He arrived without knocking. He sat across from her desk. His feet did not quite go on it. He waited. She had a document in front of her. She spun it across the desk. He looked at it. The formal nomination for the 6th Hokage, his name already printed, 3 council stamps, the Jonin commander's signature, Kakashi's note in the margin, self-evident. The council voted, Tsunade said. The Jonin council voted after them. Kakashi abstained because he said it was obvious to anyone with working eyes. Naruto looked at the document for a long time. His expression moved through something complicated. Something that started in the chest of a 3-year-old who had told the Hokage he just needed people to stay out of his way, and ended in the jaw of a 17-year-old who had found reasons to want more than that. "I told you I wanted this," he said. "You've been telling us since before you could articulate why." She tapped the nomination with one finger. "Sign it." He looked at her. "You're going to give me the responsibility speech? The weight of the hat? What it costs?" "I made that speech to myself for a week," Tsunade said. "Then I remembered who I was making it about, and I stopped." Her voice softened, barely, just enough to be noticed. "Your father wore this title. He was the best of us." She pushed the document across, but "Prove it runs in the family." He picked up the pen. He signed it without ceremony and without hesitation. The confident stroke of someone signing a document that had always been waiting for their name. He slid it back. Tsunade looked at the signature. She exhaled once. Her eyes were bright for a moment, and she did not acknowledge it. "The ceremony is in 2 weeks. Try to wear something that isn't covered in combat damage. Walk." "I make no promises," he said. He stood. He was at the door when she said his name. He stopped. "The village is afraid of you," she said. He turned. "I know. They've been afraid of me since I was 8 years old. They'll manage." "But they trust you." Her voice was steady, certain. "The people who watched you fight for this village, against pain, against Madara, against everything that has tried to end us, they trust you." He held her gaze. "That's enough," he said, and walked out. Mei Terumi arrived 2 days before the ceremony. She came under the official banner of the Kirigakure Konoha Alliance, formally ratified in the weeks following the summit, built in the space between nations by 2 people who understood that alliances are architecture, and architecture requires both parties to carry weight. She walked through the Konoha gate with Chojuro and Ao and 3 additional escorts, her head up, her weapons sheathed, dressed in the traveling formal of a Kage who goes where she decides to go. He was at the gate, standing against the fence post. Arms crossed, eyes on the road. Nobody had told him her arrival time. She stopped in front of him. She looked at the new stone in the outer wall behind him, repaired from Payne's assault, clearly fresh against the old. She looked at the crack in the daytime moon. She looked at him. "You broke the moon," she said. "It needed breaking." She looked at the sky again. The crack was visible even in daylight, a thin dark line running across the lunar surface, permanent, impossible to miss. "The astronomers are furious. They'll get over it." She looked back at him. "You're going to be Hokage in 2 days." "Yes, and I'm the Mizukage." "Also yes. This is going to be an interesting political relationship." His mouth curved. The expression was warm in a way his expression seldom managed. Warmth that existed because she was the cause of it, and warmth from Naruto Uzumaki was a rare enough commodity to be treated as precious. "Everything involving you is interesting," he said. Chojuro made the smallest possible sound 3 feet behind Mei. She did not acknowledge him. "Walk me through the village," she said. He fell into step beside her. They walked through the rebuilding streets, past construction scaffolding, past market vendors calling prices, past the academy playground where students chased each other with wooden weapons in supreme indifference to recent apocalypse. She watched the village respond to him as he passed. A civilian sweeping her shop entrance stopped and nodded, the nod of recognition, of gratitude, of knowing she was still there because of the person walking past. Jinin straightened. An old woman called something from a tea shop doorway, and Naruto answered in 2 flat words that made her laugh. "They don't fear you the same way they did," Mei observed. "Some still do, but the majority has shifted." He looked down the street at the village working around him. A village that only stays in line because it's afraid isn't a village. "It's a pen." He was quiet for a step. "I'd rather be the reason they don't need to be afraid of anyone else." She looked at him. "That's the most Hokage thing you've ever said." He grimaced. "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation." She laughed, openly, fully, a sound that carried down the street and made two nearby jonin look up from their conversation and Chojuro nearly walk into a lamppost. Naruto looked at her when she laughed with an expression that was unguarded in a way his expressions almost never managed. Surprised by it, caught by it, by her and the fullness of the sound and the way she did not care who heard, they stopped at the memorial stone. He stood before the names carved into its face and read them with the attention of someone taking inventory, counting what had been paid, measuring what it had cost. She stood beside him. The silence between them was comfortable in the way that silences between certain people need no explanation. "The war added more names," he said. "They always do," she said. He stepped back from the stone. "This village has been paying debts for 70 years. Under me, it stops taking on new ones. You can't control every variable. You can't prevent every loss. I can make the cost high enough that anyone considering putting us in debt thinks twice." She held his gaze. Amber and cyan, fire and lightning. The specific gravity between them was heavy enough to make the air taste different. "You are going to be a very unusual Hokage," she said. "I intend to be." That night, the night before the ceremony, they were on a roof again. His roof this time. The apartment building where he had lived since he was 3 years old, the same small unit, the same window that faced the village, the roof access they had used 10,000 times, the view of the monument from the south side where his face would be carved beside his father starting next week. May had a bottle of sake from the Hokage's formal gift stock. She had not asked permission to open it. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I've been ready since I was 12. "That's a dodge, and you know it." He looked at her. She looked back, directly, without the filter that everyone else in the world used when they looked at him. She was the only person who had ever looked at him and seen something other than a weapon or a monster or a miracle. She saw the person. She saw the person, and she sat beside him anyway. "Yes," he said, "I'm ready." She poured 2 cups. She held hers up. To the 6th Hokage, he held his up. To the Mizukage, who walked into a room full of people who were afraid and sat down. She blinked. Once, the briefest flash of surprise, because the specificity of the observation told her he had remembered the exact moment, 2 years ago in the land of water, when she had been the only person in a room full of his Reiatsu who refused to lean back. She covered the surprise well. She always covered things well. "You were watching," she said. "I'm always watching," he said. They drank. She stayed until just before dawn. The sake was gone, and the stars were gone, and the sky was turning the dark blue that precedes sunrise. She rose from the parapet with unhurried grace, and he did not tell her to stay, and she did not tell him she wanted to. The boundary she drew was deliberate, and he respected it, because the thing he found most interesting about her had always been the things she withheld by choice rather than by fear. He watched the sky go from dark blue to gray to the gold edge of dawn. The village below breathed in its sleep. The monument behind him bore his likeness, carved in stone beside Minato Namikaze's face, looking out over everything, permanent. The ceremony was brief because he had requested it brief. Tsunade stood at the podium in the village square, the hat in her hands, the crowd assembled and pressing forward and holding its collective breath. She spoke, short, direct, the words of a Hokage transferring responsibility to the person she trusted to carry it. She held out the hat. Naruto took it. He put it on. It sat slightly crooked on his head, fitting him the way all things fit him, imperfectly and absolutely at once. The crowd erupted. The sound filled the morning air, voices layered on voices, the accumulated relief and pride and uncertainty and hope of a village that had been through everything a village can be through and was choosing, now, to trust the person who had stood between them and every version of the end. He stood at the podium with the hat on his head and the katana on his back and his hands in his pockets. He looked at the crowd. Kakashi stood in the second row. His book was closed. The first time anyone could remember Kakashi's book being closed in a public setting. His visible eye was curved into its crescent. His posture was the posture of a man who had been waiting to see this for years and was profoundly, quietly satisfied. Sakura stood beside him. Her hands were clasped. Her eyes were bright with something that contained all the years since a 12-year-old girl had watched a feral boy walk to the back of a classroom and known, without language for it, that something extraordinary was happening. Sasuke stood in the back, arms folded, his gaze directed somewhere around Naruto's shoulder rather than directly at his face. His presence was the statement, showing up was the thing, being here was the gesture, and for Sasuke Uchiha, that was equivalent to a standing ovation. Shikamaru stood in the fourth row, looking resigned and somehow content simultaneously. The expression of a genius who had long ago calculated that this outcome was inevitable and was now enjoying being proven right. Rock Lee vibrated with restrained enthusiasm, his fist clenched at his side, his bowl cut trembling with the effort of remaining still. Gaara stood at the edge of the square, sand-robed, still. The Kazekage watching a fellow container take a different throne, his sea-green eyes steady with the quiet acknowledgement of someone who understood. Because they had been understood, because a hand had reached into a Shukaku's chest and pulled them back to the living, because a voice had said count on it and had meant it. Hinata stood near the back. Her pale eyes found his across the crowd, and she held steady, quiet, without stammer or flush or downcast gaze. She looked at him the way she had always looked at him, the way a person looks at someone they recognized from the very first moment, before that person became anything the world had a name for. He met her gaze. He nodded, single, small, the kind that carries more than speeches can. Her hands clasped at her waist unfolded. Mai Terumi stood at the side of the square with her escorts. She watched. Her amber eyes were doing something complicated. She made no gesture. She did not wave or nod or perform. She watched, and the watching was enough, because between them the language had never required words. He turned to the crowd. He had been told to say something. Hope, unity, the future, the standard material of inauguration speeches. He kept his hands in his pockets. "This village tried to break me when I was 3 years old," he said, and his voice carried across the square without effort, without volume, through the weight of what lived behind it. And the ones that didn't try just stood by and watched. For a long time, that suited me fine. I didn't need any of you. He paused. The square was silent. That changed, because I found something worth keeping. He looked at the monument, at the faces carved into stone, at his own face among them. "This is my territory. Everything in it is mine. You had your warning." He surveyed the crowd. "Any questions?" The silence held for 3 beats. Then the crowd erupted again, louder, rawer, the sound of a village accepting its king with full knowledge of what he was and choosing him anyway. He stepped off the podium. He did not stay to receive the noise. He let it happen around him and behind him, and he walked into the village, hat slightly crooked, katana on his back, hands in his pockets. And the sound of Konoha followed him down the street, like something that had finally found its home. Mai fell into step beside him as he passed the side of the square. He did not look at her. He did not need to. Her presence was a frequency he had learned to recognize across rooms and across nations and across every distance that had ever existed between them. "Nice speech," she said. "You're laughing at me." "I'm absolutely serious." She matched his pace without adjusting, without rushing, the way two people walk together when walking together is the point. You basically told them you owned them, and they cheered. They know what they signed up for. Apparently they do. They walked in silence for a few steps. The village moved around them, people calling congratulations from shop fronts, children running alongside them for half a block before losing interest, the sound of hammers on new construction, the smell of food from the market stalls. She reached up without breaking stride. 2 fingers against the brim of his hat, a small correction, adjusting the angle, fixing the crook. The contact lasted less than a second. Her fingers against the fabric, a correction so small and so deliberate and so intimate that it said everything that neither of them would ever say aloud. He looked forward. She looked forward. His mouth carried the smallest version of his grin. The real one, the one that had nothing to do with teeth or danger and everything to do with the single specific person walking beside him. Behind them, Chojuro nudged Ao. Ao stared ahead with the studied focus of a man pretending to be somewhere else. Chojuro nudged again. Ao said through a mouth that barely moved, "I will file a conduct report." Chojuro stopped nudging, but did not stop grinning. They walked. The village was loud behind them. The morning sun was warm. The broken moon hung in the daytime sky, cracked, permanent. The scar of what had happened here written across the heavens where every nation could see it and remember. The hat sat on his head at the angle she had set. The katana sat across his back with the weight of everything it had ever cut. The woman beside him matched his pace without effort because she was the only person in the world who walked at the same speed. He had never looked down at his village and felt grateful for it. He looked down at it and felt exactly what it was, his.
Insane, right? If you enjoyed this epic story, make sure to hit like, subscribe for more powerful what-if breakdowns, and drop your favorite moment in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.